Chapter 665. Li Tianlan's voice was full of calmness and reason, as if he had thought about it for a long time. Dongqing Wudi's body relaxed completely. His eyes were happy, and he looked extremely gratified. Compared with Li Tianlan sweeping the entire Beihai province, he was more willing to see Li Tianlan's current choice. He had no requirements for Jianghu state. This approach was not only correct, it could even be said to be mature and wise. This was not a reversal of ideas, but a transformation of fundamental thinking. Dongqing Wudi didn't know if Li Tianlan was aware of this, but when he said this decision, Dongqing Wudi clearly noticed Li Tianlan's change. He was still moving forward on martial arts. He was invincible and had no retreat. But in the general trend he had learned to give in. He gave in from the perspective of a superior. Not making any requirements for Jianghu state was a good move that amazed Dongqing Wudi. It was related to his bravery in Beihai. This advance and retreat were almost all the essence. Many benefits of everything today might be reflected for a long time. But giving up the immediate benefits that Jianghu state gave to East Emperor Palace was enough to show that Li Tianlan's vision was getting farther and farther. In the early morning light, the wind blew over the hillside and passed through Dongqing Wudi's white temples. He could hardly hide the smile on his lips. This was what he wanted. He wanted more than an invincible realm expert who could sweep everything. He wanted a real heir. Such a person should not only be invincible in force, but also have no shortcomings in all aspects. I support your decision. Without any hesitation, Dongqing Wudi expressed his attitude with a smile. Li Tianlan said no more and quietly hung up the phone. How was it? Bai Qingzhao asked at once. Very good. Dongqing Wudi said with a smile. Qingzhao, how do you think Jianghu state should face a Tianlan who has no requirements? Bai Qingzhao froze and looked thoughtful. Dongqing Wudi turned to look at the rushing river and muttered to himself, I can't wait to see their reaction. Dongqing Wudi wanted to see the collective reaction of the high-level officials of Jianghu state. This morning, when many places around the world were still shrouded in darkness, countless people in the dark world saw the reaction of the Wang family of Beihai. The silver moon fell into Beihai. That day, the palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace did not go to the stage of formidable person. However, he left his mark on the stone of ambition forever. The Wang family of Beihai was silent. From beginning to end, in the face of great humiliation and Li Tianlan's aggressiveness, the Wang family of Beihai chose to compromise in the embarrassment that made onlookers uncomfortable. Even the fact that Li Tianlan never stepped into the stage of formidable person was not the Wang family of Beihai's role. It was because of Wang Yuetong, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. 3 hours after the battle on Mount Dibing ended, the scene of the battle on the mountain had completely spread throughout the dark world. The Sword Emperor's era, which had lasted for decades, seemed to have completely passed from this moment onwards. Countless people began to quietly think about the plan for the Wang family of Beihai. In a mysterious and turbulent undercurrent. In Eastern Europe, the disciples who had been severely injured by the robbery were finally able to get out of bed and move. The disciples did not return to the European Holy Land with the Vatican. The tribulation on the night before the day of eradication had almost broken the sharpest blade of the Vatican. Arcis, an expert at the peak of the invincible realm who ranked third on the divine list, died. Thousands of the most elite saint warriors of the Vatican had suffered heavy casualties. The entire Vatican had ushered in a serious loss that had not occurred in decades. Its comprehensive strength could even be said to have been weakened by half overnight. The disciple, who had exposed his identity and position, stayed in Eastern Europe to recuperate. Now he was basically out of the order of the Vatican. The disciple had now been transferred to Reki City, and was quietly taken care of by an inconspicuous small family. Such a small family was not even close to the rich and powerful. At best, it could only be regarded as a relatively rich family. Because of this, such a family was not worth paying attention to at all. The disciple recuperated here quietly. Today, when Reki City was still under full martial law, he was not even disturbed once. He quietly lurked in Reki City, quietly recuperated, and coldly watched the various changes in the dark world. Only occasionally would he contact the extremely mysterious His Majesty. The result of Mount Dibing spread throughout the dark world in the shortest time. That strange video almost followed the result and spread in the dark world. The Devil Troop, Jianghu, the Wang family of Beihai, and countless elites who had attacked Zhuanyuantai all fell. Blood flowed like a river. Wang Yuetong pulled out a sword and stabbed herself in the heart. The picture was clear and stable. Li Tianlan in the video was strong and cold. This kind of horror had been well known with this video at this time. The disciple watched the video silently, over and over again. He picked up the mobile phone on the table and quietly thought about whether he should call His Majesty. The door was pushed open silently. Under the soft light, a figure who seemed to be shrouded in darkness and shadows came in. "Have you watched the video?" He glanced at the disciple and asked in a calm voice. The disciple's body stiffened in place. He stared at the figure who came in. The dark shadow seemed to linger around him, and everything around him seemed extremely vague. This was enough to show that the other party's control of power had reached an incredible level. Even the disciple who was close to the peak of the invincible realm could not see his face clearly for a while. But in the extremely blurry shadows, he finally saw a trace of a familiar silhouette. And this voice was even more familiar to him. The disciple almost jumped up all of a sudden. The violent movement affected his injury, and his face suddenly turned pale. He gave a muffled groan, and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, but he became extremely excited. "Your Majesty?" His voice was high, but he tried his best to suppress it. "Your Majesty, is it you?" This was the first time he had seen the real body of His Majesty. It was a little vague, but it was extremely real. Before this, the disciple had only seen His Majesty once. But the His Majesty he saw was just a sword intent of His Majesty. After that, the communication between the two was basically on the phone or through the internet. But this time, this extremely vague figure made the disciple tremble slightly. He was sure that this was not a sword intent of His Majesty. It was the real His Majesty. "Why are you so excited?" In the darkness, His Majesty's indifferent and soft low laugh rang out. "How are your injuries?" "Fortunately, I can recover soon." The disciple's suppressed voice became a little hoarse. His injuries were actually very serious. If he recovered to his heyday, it would take at least 2 or 3 years. But within half a year, he felt that he could recover at least 60% of his combat capability. Such combat capability was basically invincible in today's dark world, as long as he didn't meet Li Tianlan. The disciple thought and subconsciously looked at the video again. In the video, Li Tianlan raised his palm, so calm and so majestic. In the sword intent, a large number of elites of the Wang family of Beihai, who rushed to Li Tianlan, were torn apart. The disciple's heart suddenly became more and more depressed. "It's wonderful." His Majesty was also enjoying the video. He was silent for a long time, and then slowly said, "The video is also very clear." The disciple was stunned and remembered what he had just thought. "Your Majesty, this video is a little strange." "Why?" His Majesty asked. "This is a battle that happened on Mount Dibing, which is the base camp of the Wang family of Beihai. In fact, I'm a little surprised that the news spread so quickly. This video is obviously shot at close range. I don't think any force can lurk on Mount Dibing at this time, even if Sword Emperor is not there," the disciple said. "Indeed." His Majesty nodded. "So this video can't come from other forces. It's obviously shot by someone inside the Wang family of Beihai. There's nothing strange about it." "Inside the Wang family of Beihai?" The disciple was stunned and said reflexively, "Wang Xiaoyao's man?" "Wang Xiaoyao?" His Majesty's tone was a little playful. At that moment, he seemed to become a little strange. "No." He shook his head. "It should be Wang Qinglei. This is like a signal." Li Tianlan in the video is a foreign invasion, but this video represents the internal troubles of the Wang family of Beihai. Tut tut, is the dignified Beihai going to be in chaos after all? His tone was a little complicated. "The silver moon moves Beihai. Tut tut, that's good." The disciple stood aside respectfully and didn't speak. "We don't need to care about the Wang family of Beihai at this time. I'm afraid a lot of idiots will jump out eagerly. But in such a sensitive period of the game between Jianghu state and the Wang family, whoever stands out will die." His Majesty looked at the video and said, "And they'll die in an ugly way." "Then what about us?" the disciple asked. "We'll just focus on developing ourselves." His Majesty turned off the computer. "Arrange it. I want to meet the Pope." When everything about Mount Dibing was spread throughout the dark world in the form of videos, Wang Xianxia, who was still in Fanio City, finally walked out of the pile of documents that could drown him. Since coming to Eastern Europe, Wang Xiaoyao, who seemed to have nothing to do but had everything under control, once again sat in front of Wang Xiangxiao. There were no documents between them this time, only a flash drive with the video. What is it? Wang Xiangxiao stared at the flash drive for a while and suddenly asked. Li Tianlan is in Mount Dibing. Wang Xiaoyao yawned carelessly. This is a video. Do you want to have a look? Wang Xiangxiao's body, which had been calm, seemed to shake for a moment. He looked at Wang Xiaoyao's still laid-back expression, narrowed his eyes, and went straight to the point. Who shot it? Wang Xiaoyao glanced at Wang Xiangxiao. Your man? Wang Xiangxiao raised his eyebrows. No. Wang Xiaoyao said blandly. Is it Qinglei's man? I want this name. Wang Xiangxiao was silent for a while and said slowly. His voice was flat and without any emotion, but it was extremely firm. Wang Xiaoyao did not say anything. Wang Xiangxiao seemed to have lost his expectations and said with a poker face, What's the result? Di Jiang lost. He lost miserably, but he broke through to the invincible realm. Yue Tong was seriously injured in order to stop Li Tianlan. Wang Xiaoyao said blandly, Li Tianlan didn't go to the stage of formidable person, but the silver moon sword in the 13th floor fell on the stone of formidable person. Wang Xiangxiao listened to the deliberately simplified result and was silent for a long time. In the silence he slowly stood up. The flash drive with the video was crushed by him. He walked to the window and looked at the night outside, silent for a long time. The silver moon moved Beihai. When the dark world was in an uproar, no one knew what the young man, who was nominally the first heir of the Wang family of Beihai, was thinking. Wang Xiaoyao quietly looked at his nephew's back, his eyes extremely quiet. Second uncle. After an unknown period of time, Wang Xiangxiao suddenly shouted. Wang Xiaoyao responded. Wang Xiangxiao turned his head and smiled. He looked at Wang Xiaoyao's eyes and said calmly, I want to go back to Beihai. Now. Chapter 666. When night fell, Li Tianlan's figure finally approached the white snow that had been high up in the north of Jianghu state for many years. In the night, Mount Taibai was beautiful and holy. It was a solemn beauty. Li Tianlan stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up at the top for a long time before he slowly went up. He had been the young governor of Sai City for several years. But except for the time when he traveled thousands of miles, this was the first time he had officially set foot in Sai City, the city of assassins that shocked the whole dark world. White snow, night, mountain forest. In the cold and almost indifferent atmosphere, from every corner and in every direction, eyes gathered on Li Tianlan from time to time and then quickly moved away. These were all secret sentries of Sai City. During the years of silence of the Li family, Sai City had always been aloof from the world within Jianghu state. Therefore, there were not many core members in Sai City. Even with the peripheral members, the total number was very small compared to the reputation of Sai City. But these small number of secret sentries were cleverly distributed around Mount Taibai, and clearly grasped the movement of the whole mountain. There was almost no blind spot on Mount Taibai where the eyes of countless secret sentries met. Li Tianlan's expression was still calm. He just walked up unhurriedly as if he didn't feel those hidden eyes in the dark. The news that he had come to Sai City seemed to have spread. But it was still silent on Mount Taibai. There was no greeting or cheering. It was unusually quiet. On the path on the mountainside stood a boulder nearly 20 meters high, which looked like a giant in the night. The words Military Restricted Zone still reflected a clear light even in the night. In contrast, the words Sai City above the words were much more low-key. It was said that the 3 scarlet characters were personally written by Situ Tsongyue, the hidden god of Jianghu state. They were written in bold calligraphy, cold and sharp. The silence on the top of the mountain remained. Li Tianlan stood in front of the boulder and looked up at the stone tablet in front of him. After a long silence, he continued to climb the mountain. After passing the stone tablet, the snow on the mountain became thicker and thicker. It was all over the mountain, and the snow was dazzling. Li Tianlan's eyes grew calmer. All the battles in Beihai province seemed to have been suppressed in his heart the moment he left Beihai. Walking alone on the mountain road, all he could think about was Sai City. He thought of the support that Sai City had given him since he entered the secular world. He thought of Tribulation, who had been seriously injured and whose foundation had been completely destroyed. He thought of Sunset, who sacrificed herself for him in East Island. He thought of Deep Dream. He thought of Cool Breeze and Flowing Cloud. Sai City. Purgatory of Heaven Capital. Heaven Luo Hall. It was a different form of address. It was the same duty, the same position, and the same person. Sai City was the most mysterious Tianluo Hall in the Purgatory of Heaven Capital. And it had always been so. Li Tianlan breathed deeply. His figure was like a drifting shadow in the snow that covered the mountains, flickering, almost incorporeal, but his speed was surprisingly fast. It had only been a few days since Li Tianlan woke up in Yuzhou. But in the battle with Di Jiang, his dual wind and thunder veins were completely restored, and they were even more powerful than before. Li Tianlan seemed calmer and calmer. His footsteps stepped on the snow as he reached the top of the mountain. In the silent world, he finally saw the first figure he had seen since he came up the mountain. Li Tianlan didn't know if this was a welcome. Deep Dream stood less than 50 meters in front of him. Mi's enemy. Under the night sky, her eyes were shining, filled with fanaticism. Young governor. In the silence, Deep Dream laughed, with undisguised joy in her tone. Welcome back. He was back. Not to welcome him to Mount Dibbing. Li Tianlan's eyes warmed for a moment. He nodded and asked directly, "Where is the governor?" "Her Highness is accompanying the deputy governor." Deep Dream told the truth. "She already knew you came up the mountain. She asked me to wait here and take you there." Li Tianlan didn't say much, but simply said, "Lead the way." Deep Dream turned around and led Li Tianlan forward. Her figure followed Li Tianlan by half a step in a measured way, but she quietly led the way for Li Tianlan. "How many people are there in Sai City?" Li Tianlan walked quietly and suddenly asked. Deep Dream was stunned and whispered, "Including those on the periphery, there are about 2,000 people in Sai City, but there are less than 400 recorded." "Are they all killers?" Li Tianlan asked. If this was the case, Sai City was definitely a very terrible force. What did 400 well-trained professional killers mean? Perhaps in a large-scale war, the same number of killers was far less than the same number of soldiers. But in the dark, 400 professional killers were a nightmare for any force. On the scale of life and death, an assassin would always have an identity with infinite possibilities. Unlike martial arts, they did not even care about realms or battle prowess. For a true assassin, battle prowess was just a means to kill, nothing more. To kill, it was not necessary to rely on force. If there were really 400 professional killers, Li Tianlan's scalp tingled at the thought of that scene. If he stood on the opposite side of Sai City, not to mention the current Emperor Dong's palace, even if Emperor Dong's palace really surpassed the Wang family of Beihai in the future, he would suffer heavy losses in the face of hundreds of professional killers and scrupulous assassination. He might not be afraid of these. But he didn't know how many talents his Emperor Dong's palace would lose. Li Tianlan was lost in thought. That scene really had a trance power when he thought of it. "No." Deep Dream interrupted Li Tianlan's fantasy. "There are only about 40 real killers in Sai City, that is, those who have reached our graduation level. Among them, Sure and 10 others haven't completed enough tasks. As for the others, some are trained here, and there are some talents in other fields. No matter how aloof Sai City is, it's still a force. To maintain its operation, it can't only rely on a group of killers." The gap was really a little big. Li Tianlan, who was still thinking about the destructive power of 400 professional killers a moment ago, felt a little helpless when he heard Deep Dream's number. He looked around and suddenly asked, "How many people are here now?" "Very few." Deep Dream shook her head. "But Governor has issued a summon order. Most people will return to Mount Tai Bai before noon tomorrow. You can see them tomorrow, young Governor." Li Tianlan was silent for a moment, nodded and repeated, "Tomorrow? Well, tomorrow." Deep Dream gave him a strange look but didn't say anything. She took Li Tianlan to a small shabby palace and whispered, "His Highness and Deputy Governor are inside." "I won't go in. Deputy Governor never lets us in." Li Tianlan answered and knocked on the door. "Come in. Situ Tsongyue is quiet." A voice rang out from within the palace. Deep Dream stood motionless outside the palace, but her eyes were fixed on the interior of the palace. She was a little curious and obviously wanted to know what was inside. Li Tianlan thought for a moment, then pushed the door open and walked in. The palace was very small. The interior decorations were ridiculously simple. The small palace only had 2 floors. However, the second floor was completely sealed off. There was only a bed in the living room and nothing else. The hall was empty. Only the hard bed was there. Li Tianlan didn't even see any sofas, tables, or chairs in the hall. There was not even a single light in the hall. Under the curtain of night, in the darkness, the palace was so quiet that it seemed like a deserted place. Li Tianlan stood in the darkness and was completely speechless for a while. An empty palace and a small bed. When all of this was combined together, it actually brought him an indescribable shock. This was Tribulation's residence in Sai City. He was the deputy governor of Sai City. Throughout the year, for many years, he spent most of his time in this palace. 1 year, 5 years, or even 10 years. Except for Situ Tsongyue, no one in Sai City had ever entered this palace, and no one would know what it looked like. It was like Tribulation's own world that he carefully guarded. It was empty, cold, and dark. Li Tianlan didn't feel lonely in it, but he clearly felt a kind of silence, as if his heart was dead. In silence, Li Tianlan took 2 steps forward. In front of the hard bed, Situ Tsongyue, dressed in white, stood there, motionless. Tribulation lay on the bed, breathing weakly and also motionless. Li Tianlan hesitated for a moment, then broke the silence in front of him and whispered, "How is Marshal Uncle's injury?" "It's not getting better, nor is it getting worse." Situ Tsongyue sighed softly. "I really don't know when he will wake up." Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and seemed to hesitate again. "What do you want to say?" Situ Tsongyue turned to look at him. The light in the palace was so dim that Li Tianlan couldn't see Situ Tsongyue's expression. "I'm thinking if I should take Marshal Uncle to Tiannan. In the Wang family of Beihai, the Naylan family will send someone to treat him. If Marshal Uncle is there, the possibility of recovery will be greater." Li Tianlan told the truth. "The physician king family?" Situ Tsongyue raised her eyebrows. Li Tianlan nodded and said nothing. "Okay." Situ Tsongyue thought for a while and nodded. "I'll arrange it. I'll send him to Tiannan in a few days." "Okay." Li Tianlan nodded. "What do you think of Sai City?" Situ Tsongyue glanced at her brother lying on the bed again, sighed tiredly, and asked casually. Li Tianlan walked to the bed in silence and looked at the silent snow outside the window. He didn't speak for a long time. Situ Tsongyue came over and looked at Li Tianlan's expression. Against the white snow, his expression looked a little gloomy but extremely calm. It was an indescribable depth. Situ Tsongyue's eyes were in a trance for a moment and she asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about a question." Li Tianlan said, "I'm the young governor of Sai City, but is Sai City still my Sai City now?" Chapter 667. Since becoming the young governor of Sai City, Li Tianlan and Situ Tsongyue had not seen each other many times. There were a lot of phone calls between them. Whether it was through video call or phone call, Li Tianlan was always reserved, quiet, and silent, with a little bit of unobvious but extremely sincere gratitude. No one expected that when Li Tianlan officially entered Sai City this time, there would be such a scene. Situ Tsongyue didn't expect it either. "Sai City, is it my Sai City?" In the darkness, Li Tianlan's voice was calm, but Situ Tsongyue could clearly feel the sharp power behind the calmness. This was definitely a sharp and somewhat domineering question. In the almost empty hall, Tribulation lay there quietly. The darkness seemed to solidify, oppressive and heavy. Situ Tsongyue looked at Li Tianlan's side face and was silent for a long time. Now, Li Tianlan was really different from before. She couldn't tell when the change began. Earlier, maybe it was the moment when he stood up again on Lonely Mountain after the final battle of Heaven Capital. Maybe it was the transformation of traveling thousands of miles in 3 years. Maybe it was the moment when he defeated Wang Xianxia, Gu Hanshan, Jiang Shangyu, and Song Xiai together in the final maneuver. Or it was when the Snow Dance Corps set foot in Eastern Europe under his leadership. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the Invincible Realm experts were crushed and killed by the general trend like non-entities. It was the moment when the eternal meteor in the sky above Mormons was completely extinguished. Or it was the moment when he swept all the way in Beihai and finally set foot on Mount Dibing. When did the change begin? Maybe the change had been going on all the time. However, Situ Tsungyue ignored it. It seemed that everyone ignored it. On this day, Li Tianlan had been in the secular world for almost 4 years. But the time he stayed in the public eye was too little. His talent could be said to be astonishing, but his relatively weak strength always gave him a feeling of incomparable frailty when mixed in with the general trend. The Li family, the Wang family of Beihai, the Giant Group, the Samsara Palace, and Sai City. The final battle of Heaven Capital. The chaos of Eastern Europe. He had always been walking in the center of the general trend, but in the eye of the storm, there seemed to be a kind of power that had quietly shrouded him, causing his figure to become blurry. It was so blurry that he had almost left everyone's line of sight, so blurry that he did not even have much sense of existence. That kind of power was so subtle, yet it was everywhere. It was so careful, yet so affectionate. Situ Tsungyue naturally knew where that kind of power came from, or who it came from. She was a piece of darkness, like the most mysterious veil. She had dragged Li Tianlan into the general trend where the wind and waves were the fiercest, but she had always firmly protected him, silently bearing all the shadows that wanted to devour Li Tianlan. Until the chaos in Eastern Europe. That sword strike had illuminated the entire world of darkness, ending this era that belonged to the Sword Emperor, which was filled with countless grievances. The veil that shrouded and protected Li Tianlan was completely broken with the shadows all over the sky. Li Tianlan walked out of the darkness and appeared clearly in everyone's sight. There were no longer any shadows in his sky. It was clear and boundless, bright and splendid. It seemed that Li Tianlan had appeared in everyone's sight for the first time. The heavenly light shone on the spirit-locking platform. The silver moon fell on the North Sea. He swept across Mount Dibbing, swallowed thousands of miles, and was invincible. At this moment, the eyes of the whole world seemed to be focused on Li Tianlan. His figure was extremely dazzling in this era. This was his era. Situ Tsungyue suddenly had some doubts. She didn't understand whether Li Tianlan, who was so clear now, had always been like this, or he had slowly become like this. He had become so proactive. He took the initiative to come to Mount Dibbing and ask the sharpest question. At this moment, Situ Tsungyue seemed to be able to feel Li Tianlan's mood. It was a kind of initiative that tried to grasp everything in his hands. He didn't want to passively endure anything anymore. He wanted to be in charge of everything. He became ambitious, sensitive, paranoid, and overbearing. Situ Tsungyue thought quietly. In the silence, Li Tianlan had turned his eyes and his eyes fell on her face. Tianyi had told him about the structure of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital when he was in Tongtian. This was a superforce that had been secretly developed for many years. Its structure was extremely complete, and there were only 5 main and core institutions. Immortality, Immortality, and Sinluo had now completely appeared in front of the dark world. They represented the most terrifying combat capability and explosive power of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital. And hidden in the dark was Heaven's Fall and Heaven's Fall. Heaven's Fall was the top assassination organization. Heaven's Fall was the most detailed intelligence organization. Heaven's Fall Temple was Sai City. In the sequence of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, Situ Tsungyue was the master of Heaven's Fall Temple. Tianyi once said that Heaven's Fall had been standing by Li Tianlan's side. But the Purgatory of Heaven Capital had always been Li Guangtu's Purgatory of Heaven Capital. And Situ Tsungyue was Li Guangtu's woman. Li Tianlan didn't want to doubt anything. He took the initiative to come to Sai City because he wanted to know Situ Tsungyue's attitude, as well as the attitude of the Heaven Fall Temple. As long as it was a clear attitude, any kind of attitude was okay. So he asked directly. Was Sai City still his Sai City? Situ Tsungyue laughed. It was a kind of extremely clean beauty, without the traces of time, as clear as the snow on Mount Tai. She reached out and touched Li Tianlan's hair, scratched his scalp, and said with a smile, "Little Tianlan, you came to Mount Tai, but we didn't greet you with great fanfare. Are you angry?" Li Tianlan was stunned for a moment, and his face suddenly became extremely embarrassed. "You are the young governor of Sai City. Coming here means going home. Have you ever seen anyone who needs to be greeted by his family when he comes home?" Situ Tsungyue continued. "I didn't mean that." Li Tianlan took a deep breath, turned his head to look out of the window, and was silent for a long time. His expression gradually calmed down. "Sai City, Heaven Fall Temple." His voice was low and calm. Situ Tsongyue's body shook slightly for a moment, and she raised her eyebrows in surprise. I am the young governor of Sai City. What am I to the Heaven Fall Temple? He said slowly. What am I to the entire purgatory of Heaven Capital? Situ Tsongyue was silent for a long time. Then she sighed softly and did not speak. I am grateful for what Sai City has done for me. I am grateful from the bottom of my heart. Li Tianlan whispered. Auntie, I came here today to ask for an answer. Is Sai City mine or his? No matter what the answer is, I can accept it. Even if Sai City is not mine, we will not be enemies in the future. His. Li Tianlan didn't say who he was referring to, but Situ Tsongyue naturally knew. Situ Tsongyue smiled bitterly. She didn't want to answer such a question, and even instinctively resisted it. Her voice was a little helpless and she whispered, Why do you have to make it so clear? The Li family is my Li family. Li Tianlan said. He said this sentence firmly and unquestionably. The Li family was stubborn. It was not only Li Kuang-tu who was stubborn. Now the Li family was his, and it didn't belong to anyone else. It's his and it's yours. Why do you do this? He is still recuperating in Yuzhou. When he wakes up, you can have a good talk. If the Li family is temporarily supported by him, you will be much more relaxed, and... Before Situ Tsongyue finished her words, she had been interrupted by Li Tianlan. There's nothing to talk about. He whispered, I won't let him support the Li family, neither will Grandpa. Why? Situ Tsongyue asked. Li Tianlan looked at the snow outside the window. After a long silence he said, Because he doesn't deserve it. Li Tianlan. Li Kuang-tu. The Li family. In their eyes, they didn't deserve it. This sentence was as calm as he said it. He wanted to save Li Kuang-tu in Mormons. He destroyed blue sky underworld and falling stars. He called the master of Samsara Palace a bitch, and Lin Fengting was even injured. All these were to save Li Kuang-tu. Because Li Kuang-tu's surname was Li. That was all. Situ Tsongyue couldn't say a word for a long time. He didn't deserve it. She quietly thought about it and suddenly felt extremely sad. Li Tianlan said these two words very calmly, but behind that calmness, there was indeed a kind of calmness and indifference after suffering all kinds of grievances. Li Tianlan looked out of the window and whispered, It's a beautiful place. I like it here. Situ Tsongyue smiled bitterly and didn't speak. Li Tianlan looked at her and waited for her answer. The answer is actually the most boring thing. Situ Tsongyue said slowly. But many answers are very important to me. Li Tianlan looked at Situ Tsongyue's face seriously. Situ Tsongyue was silent for a moment and said calmly, I can't give you the answer you want, or even if I have the answer, it may not be what you want. Li Tianlan's heart sank for a moment, and he subconsciously glanced at Tribulation in a coma. He didn't speak and waited quietly. It's true that you are the young governor of Sai City. Situ Tsongyue said, It's also true that he is the master of the purgatory of Heaven Capital. As for whether Sai City belongs to you or not, I can't answer this question. She said slowly, You should go to Lin and ask Senior Li. Li Tianlan froze for a moment and suddenly remembered that he seemed to have not contacted his grandfather recently. Even when he swept the entire Beihai province, he did not receive a call from Lin N. Situ Tsongyue didn't have the final say on the problem of Sai City. Li Honghe had the final say. This kind of answer was really boring. Li Tianlan was quiet for a moment. Just when Situ Tsongyue thought he had nothing to say, he suddenly said, Auntie. Situ Tsongyue was a little confused. Li Tianlan turned his head and looked at her eyes seriously. The doubt in her eyes was genuine. Do you have children? Li Tianlan asked. Situ Tsongyue's eyes changed. She turned her head and said calmly, No. I've actually checked a lot of information. Li Tianlan whispered, My grandfather has a child, Li Kuang-tu. I'm Grandpa's grandson. He whispered, Li Kuang-tu has had many women, but only 3 have been with him all the time. One is you, one is the Phantom Swordmaster of Mount Shu, and the last one is Li Shi, who has been with him for the longest time. If my surname is really Li, I am the child of the Li family. He said slowly, Li Kuang-tu is my father. He looked at Situ Tsongyue and said, You are not my mother, nor is Yun Qinshi. In Situ Tsungyue's slightly changed expression, his voice sounded, "My mother is Li Shi." Chapter 668. Li Shi was Li Tianlan's mother. If that was the case, that was really a sad story. Many years ago, the Li family was brilliant. Many years ago, Li Guangtu was high-spirited. Many years ago, Zhuan Yuantai was ambitious. Everything in that year, no matter how the Wang family of Beihai planned the treason case, no matter how insidious Kunlun City used, it was the sword that Li Shi stabbed into Li Guangtu's chest that drew the final end to the treason case. The Li family fell from the clouds to the dust. This was a falling out between husband and wife. When the Li family declined, the purgatory of heaven capital was dormant, and Li Guangtu was dormant. When Li Tianlan slowly walked up with the Li family on his back, it was the Samsara palace that helped him block the countless killing intents of the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Guangtu thought that Li Tianlan was not worthy of owning the Li family. Li Tianlan thought so too. Even if this was not a father and son killing each other, at least it was a very dark beginning. At the last moment of the final battle of heaven capital, when Li Tianlan forced himself into the invincible sword light, the woman who stabbed him in the heart was Li Shi. Li Guangtu, Li Shi, Li Tianlan. If this was really a family of three, how dark would their past and future be? Situ Tsungyue looked at Li Tianlan in silence. She looked at him pitifully and sympathetically. Li Tianlan stood there quietly, and there was only a kind of indifferent silence in his eyes. "Is it true?" he asked. "I don't know." Situ Tsungyue told the truth. She really didn't know Li Tianlan's background. Perhaps many people knew that the Li family had a daughter who died young. But the problem was that no one had seen the child. No one knew if the child had really died. All the records of the hospital were erased. People knew that it was Li Shi's child. But whether it was a boy or a girl, whether it was alive or dead, or even how many children there were similar camouflage tricks in the dark world almost every year. Who knew what was going on except those involved? Perhaps only Li Shi, Li Guangtu, and Li Honghe knew all this. Li Shi returned to Kunlun City and said that she had given birth to a daughter who had died young. With her strength at the peak of the invincible realm, her willingness to return was already loyal. How could Gu Xingyun ask anything else? Not to mention at that time, even now, Li Shi was the top expert in Kunlun City. Although Situ Tsungyue had been secretly cooperating with Li Honghe, she had never asked about such a thing, and Li Honghe had never mentioned it. So he really didn't know. Li Tianlan remained silent. He did not know the real answer. But all the signs indicated that this seemed to be the only answer. In the past 3 generations of the Li family, Li Honghe only had one son, Li Guangtu. Li Honghe was his grandfather, so it was self-evident who his father was. For this reason, since he came back from Eastern Europe, he had never contacted Li Honghe except for making a phone call to Lin N. Li Shi. Li Shi, Li Tianlan smiled. "How miserable," he said softly. The corners of Situ Tsungyue's mouth moved, but she did not speak. Just like Li Tianlan. She didn't know Li Tianlan's background, but at this time, she couldn't think of any other possibility. "There's nothing we can't face." Situ Tsungyue was silent for a long time, and then said softly, "Tianlan, after all, we are a family. Many things, even if it involves life and death, may be misunderstandings. After going back and talking to them, many knots may be untied. Even if your speculation is true, there must be a reason for it to happen. The reason is not important." Li Tianlan shook his head. "I don't need any explanation. It's not important. I can go to Beihai and anywhere else." He pointed his finger forward and said with a chuckle, "Auntie, what do you think that is?" Situ Tsungyue looked along his palm. Mount Tai Bai was extremely quiet. The wind and snow surrounded the night, and the summer stars hung in the sky. They stood on the top of the mountain and looked down. The snow, the night, and the stars. As far as the eye could see, there were endless lights. Situ Tsungyue was in a daze, and her heart was in a mess. She suddenly found that it had been many years since she stood in such a position to look at Mount Tai Bai and the distance. "What is that?" Situ Tsungyue asked in a mess. "The world." Li Tianlan's pupils were like burning flames, with a temperature that was enough to burn everything. "My world. I don't care what happened before, And I don't care about my background. I think about these questions just because I need to tell myself that no matter who my parents are, the Li family is mine. He said quietly, no one can take away my things. He patted the windowsill and whispered, this place is also mine. Situ Tsongyue did not give him an answer. But he gave himself an answer. Everyone thought that what they believed in was the truth. So did Li Tianlan. Situ Tsongyue looked at him quietly for a long time. Vaguely, she seemed to perceive Li Tianlan's purpose of coming here. How are your injuries? Li Tianlan turned to look at Situ Tsongyue and asked softly. Not bad. Situ Tsongyue whispered, I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to recover my peak combat capability in a short time. After so many years, it's rare for me to rest and relax. Maybe I can make a breakthrough in martial arts if I relax my mind. A breakthrough. With Situ Tsongyue's current realm, if she made another breakthrough, she would be close to the peak of the invincible realm. I have a suggestion. Li Tianlan suddenly said. Situ Tsongyue looked at him quietly for a long time. Her eyes were extremely bright, as if she could see through Li Tianlan's heart. Go ahead. It was simple. Her voice was neither salty nor light. Li Tianlan turned his eyes away from Situ Tsongyue and said calmly, Auntie's injury is too serious, and Martial Uncle's injury can't be improved for the time being. After all, Mount Taibai is too cold. I want you to go to the south to recuperate for a period of time, and come back when your injury is better. The south? Situ Tsongyue tilted her head and looked at Li Tianlan with a faint smile. The south. Li Tianlan nodded. Tiannan? Situ Tsongyue asked. There was no disappointment or anger in her tone, but some complexity. If Auntie thinks Tiannan is too far, Jianghu is also fine. Li Tianlan said calmly. Tiannan was the territory that Li Tianlan was about to open up. And Xianxia. Although Li Honghe was in charge of Jianghu, the powerful figure who really controlled the overall situation of Jianghu was Zhou Yuanshan, the governor of Jianghu. In other words, these two places were under Li Tianlan's absolute control. What this meant was self-evident. What about Sai City after I leave? Situ Tsongyue sighed softly. Her hunch was extremely accurate. Although she was not angry, she still felt a little self-deprecating. Li Tianlan was silent for a while. He still did not look at Situ Tsongyue but said calmly, Sai City will be fine. One of cool breeze and drifting cloud can be transferred back. In addition, I will communicate with Saint. When I am in Tiannan, he will take care of Sai City. He was talking about Saint, not Wei Kunlun. Although the two identities it was just one person, but it had an unusual meaning. The latter was the swordmaster of Mount Shu. The former was the deputy palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace. How long can Saint take care of it? Situ Tsongyue looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. A long time. Li Tianlan said quietly. His voice was steady, and his expression was calm. But at this moment, in the darkness, he gave people a feeling of extreme coldness. Enough to take care of Martial Uncle's injury. Situ Tsongyue laughed. At this moment, she completely understood what Li Tianlan meant. If Wanjie's injury can't be healed, will I have to stay in the south for the rest of my life and never come back? Situ Tsongyue asked softly. Li Tianlan's hand grabbed the wooden windowsill. After a long time he said lightly, the weather in the south is very good. Situ Tsongyue did not say much. She was Li Guangtu's woman. Obviously, Li Tianlan did not trust her now. All the previous questions were just a foreshadowing. Li Tianlan already had his own plans in his heart. He was going to take her to the south. It was just a way of saying that she was under house arrest or recuperation. Now, he was the young governor of Sai City. With her departure, the power of Sai City would naturally be concentrated in his hands. Li Tianlan came to Sai City for the power of Sai City. And he was not going to return the power that he had taken away to Situ Tsongyue. It was still the same sentence. Li Tianlan did not trust her. He trusted Tribulation. Therefore, after Tribulation's injury was healed, he would become the real governor of Sai City. Situ Tsongyue did not know whether Li Tianlan had planned to do this before he knew the truth about the Heaven Parish Hall. But obviously, after knowing that the Heaven Parish Hall was Sai City and the power of the Li family, Li Tianlan, who had always thought that the Li family belonged to him, no longer hesitated to do these things. If he didn't trust them, he would take them away. No matter who they were. Suspicious, sensitive, straightforward, decisive, and cold. He was a real ambitious man. Situ Tsongyue's heart was a little complicated, but also indescribably gratified. Even if Li Tianlan was now clearly telling her that he was going to take away the power that belonged to her. I can listen to your arrangement, but you must know that I am different here than in the south. Situ Tsongyue said slowly, even if I have no combat capability, not many people dare to act rashly here. But if I leave, Tianlan, do you really understand the current situation? What do you mean, auntie? Li Tianlan asked softly. Jianghu State and the Wang family of Beihai. Situ Tsongyue said calmly. It's not a good thing to be too independent. Li Tianlan's tone was indifferent. That's true. Situ Tsongyue said softly. But the Wang family of Beihai is used to being free. Who is willing to put shackles on their necks? So the next step must be the most intense game. Sai City in the north is the most important. Li Tianlan was silent. He suddenly remembered that at the beginning of the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Wang family of Beihai had obtained the military power of the Black Dragon Army located in the northeast in the deal with the giant group, and even obtained the leadership of the Longjiang province. Today's Longjiang province could be said to be the world of the Wang family of Beihai. Combined with the current situation, could it be that Wang Tianzong had prepared for the worst before the chaos in Eastern Europe officially began? After signing the Flying Bird Agreement, Snow Country is already the territory of the Wang family of Beihai. Situ Tsongyue reminded him. North, Snow Country, Longjiang, Black Dragon Army, Beihai Province. The instantly connected information lit up Li Tianlan's mind like a bolt of lightning. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and asked, do they dare? Chapter 669. Before everything officially started, no one could answer Li Tianlan's question. But for anyone involved in the game, this was a question that they had to start thinking about seriously. Games needed skills. The bigger the situation involved, the more skills and even the real wisdom were needed. Advance and retreat, balance, compromise, and countless subtle details were enough to affect the outcome of the game. Li Tianlan knew what Jianghu State wanted to do. He also knew what the Wang family of Beihai wanted to do in the face of Jianghu State's actions. The key was whether they dared to do it or not. Not only the Wang family of Beihai. It also included Jianghu State. Did Jianghu State dare to do it? Did the Wang family of Beihai dare to do it? When the two sides really competed, every advance and retreat was tantamount to testing each other's bottom line. This was destined to be a very complicated and incomparably long process. But Li Tianlan, who could roughly guess Wang Tianzong's injury, was very clear that Jianghu State now had plenty of time. So the most critical question was whether the Wang family of Beihai dared to do it or not. It depends on what Jianghu does. Situ Tsongyue thought for a long time and then said calmly. Li Tianlan was silent. No one thought there was anything wrong with the change of the speaker of Longjiang province at that time. At that time, everyone thought it was the Wang family of Beihai's weakening of Sai City. Who could have thought that at that time, Wang Tianzong had already prepared for this? They. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Do they have this strength? You can question anything. Situ Tsongyue said, but you absolutely can't question the strength of the Wang family of Beihai. Especially the comprehensive strength. This kind of super-rich family with hundreds of years of inheritance has experienced too many things. You alone swept Mount Dibbing and even almost got on the stage of formidable person. Although it is a shame, it may not be a big deal. At least in these hundreds of years, this is certainly not the most difficult time for the Wang family of Beihai. Such a family can survive so many ups and downs. Their foundation can be said to be really unfathomable. In the past, no one who questioned the strength of the Wang family of Beihai would have a good end. She hesitated and slowly said, including Kuangtu in those days. How high-spirited was Li Kuangtu in those days? When victory was in his grasp, the Wang family of Beihai finally turned the tables. Perhaps many people did not like Li Kuangtu, but no one dared to say that he was a fool. He was scheming, ambitious, and ready to make trouble. He thought that he had seen through everything of the Wang family of Beihai. What was the result? It was the Li family that fell from the clouds to the dust. The Wang family of Beihai still stood at the top and could not be shaken. Li Guangtu's failure might be due to his ambition, but it was definitely not due to his stupidity. He just didn't see the strength of the Wang family of Beihai clearly. They are indeed powerful. Li Tianlan nodded. He never denied it. The 200,000-strong army of the North Sea Legion was unstoppable. The thousands of people in the North Sea province were united. He still remembered that promise to His Majesty, Sword Emperor. But their strength might not be enough to support their actions. Don't forget how the North Sea province came to be. Situ Tsongyue said silently, even if you grew up on the border, Boss Li should have told you about the history of Jianghu State, right? History of Jianghu State. Li Tianlan froze for a moment. During the hundreds of years since the founding of the People's Republic, the history of Jianghu State was extremely exciting. The Wang family of Beihai had been described in history books countless times about their strength and foundation. Even many influential events were directly related to them. How did the North Sea province come to be? The North Sea province had 150,000 square kilometers of land and was the youngest province in Jianghu State. The history of the North Sea province could even be said to be the most exciting part in the history of Jianghu State, at least one of the most exciting parts. It was a legend about the Chosen One. Holy State of Beihai, Queen City, Floating Island City, Lioli City. With the Kanglan River as the boundary, it was the northern end of the North Sea province today. Before the founding of Jianghu State, it was also the land of Jianghu State, but after the founding, it was occupied by Snow Country. The Chosen One ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai, who was still in the history books, united with the Rothschild family at that time and used all means to take this land back from Snow Country, forming half of the Wang family of Beihai today. The land of the three cities south of the Kanglan River, Kanglan, Tongtian, and Choshui still belonged to East Island during that time. During that period, the Wang family of Beihai, which had completely gained a foothold, could be said to really look down on the world. In their most glorious period, there was not only the Chosen One ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai, but also a brilliant figure whose combat capability was no weaker than his. That was the founder of Zhuanyuantai, and also Li Tianlan's founder. Those decades were incomparably glorious times. The light of the Wang family of Beihai shone on the whole dark world. The land that belonged to East Island was forcibly taken down by the two people and formed the present Wang family of Beihai until today. It was also an era full of deceit and games. At that time, the Wang family of Beihai had to face Snow Country, East Island, Jianghu State, and countless forces. At that time, the comprehensive strength of the Wang family of Beihai was not as good as it was now. But its high-end combat capability was far more than it was now. And most importantly, the current Wang family of Beihai did not need to face Snow Country. Their game with Jianghu State would be more naked. If the worst happens, what will the result be? Li Tianlan suddenly asked in a low voice. Who knows? Situ Tsongyue sighed softly, feeling a little tired. She looked at Li Tianlan and said, the task from the office of the president and the army headquarters should be coming soon. Whoever is here will take the task. Tianlan, are you sure you want me to go south? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows, and a touch of sharpness flashed through his eyes. Now the Wang family of Beihai had basically controlled the overall situation of Longjiang Bay City. Longjiang and Beihai faced each other across the sea. Now that the Black Dragon Army was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai, the barrier of Longjiang Province was in the hands of Beihai Province. It was not until this moment that Li Tianlan understood why the Black Dragon Army, which had been brought to Eastern Europe by Dongqing Wudi, had not returned home. It wasn't that the warriors of the Black Dragon Army weren't trusted. It was because some of the leaders of the Black Dragon Army had changed their stance. Had the situation become so sensitive? Li Tianlan thought silently. The current situation could even be said to be on the verge of breaking out. Him sweeping through the North Sea province was a clear signal. Jianghu State's action against Beihai would begin soon. No one would think of destroying Beihai, but as the world's most powerful country, in the face of the Wang family of Beihai's repeated criticism, even if it was unconsciously, they could not tolerate it. Now with this opportunity, Jianghu State would definitely take action to weaken the autonomy and independence of the Wang family of Beihai. Beihai Province was a province, and could only be a province. Not the Beihai family. Nor was it a certain country. Undoubtedly, the Wang family of Beihai could not tolerate such a situation. They would fight and play, but Jianghu State was powerful. If Beihai really couldn't stand it, what would they do? Would they grit their teeth and compromise? Or would they grit their teeth and resist? Jianghu state was afraid of the Wang family of Beihai's resistance. And the Wang family of Beihai also knew that their final resistance was their biggest trump card. Longjiang was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. Liaodong, where Sai City was located, was connected to Longjiang and Snow Country. Snow Country had now become a puppet in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. Once the Wang family of Beihai really went crazy, more than 200,000 troops of the Beihai Corps would sweep through the Longjiang province and enter Liaodong in an instant. If Snow Country was willing to cooperate, it could completely destroy Sai City, join with the Beihai Corps, and sweep through Guangdong from Liaodong. How large was the area of the three northeastern provinces? It was 800,000 square kilometers. It was as large as several Beihai, larger than the land area of most countries in the world. Once the Wang family of Beihai fell out with Jianghu state, they could even establish a country after controlling the three northeastern provinces. And it would be a real, veritable big country. Jianghu state could not allow such a thing. But the Wang family of Beihai also had a trump card. Jianghu state was a country with nuclear weapons. And as a part of Jianghu state, the Wang family of Beihai was also a province with nuclear weapons. And nuclear weapons were under the control of the Wang family of Beihai. The number of nuclear weapons in Beihai might not be enough to destroy the world, but if it was really a life-and-death struggle, it was enough to destroy most of the territory of Jianghu state. Corpses were everywhere, blood flowed like a river, and it was a purgatory on earth. Everyone could clearly see this problem. So such a game was destined to be extremely dangerous. Neither Jianghu state nor Beihai wanted to go to this step. This also doomed this game to be a long time. But in difficult times, Jianghu state also had to fight. Especially when Jianghu state clearly felt this kind of danger, Jianghu state had to go up. To control the nuclear weapons of the Wang family of Beihai. This was the bottom line of Jianghu state. But on the other hand, this was also the bottom line of the Wang family of Beihai. In such a situation, in order to avoid the worst result, Sai City, with its special position, was bound to bear an unimaginable burden. Such a Sai City had even become a place of contention for military power. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and whispered, "If this is the case, you and Martial Uncle shouldn't stay here." Situ Tsongyue was stunned. "Go to the south," Li Tianlan said. Situ Tsongyue's eyes quietly warmed for a moment. When she proposed to go to the south before, it was because Li Tianlan didn't trust her. But now, he proposed it because he cared about her. Situ Tsongyue smiled and whispered, "Okay." She paused and continued, "But you can't be careless. It's hard for Wuxia to recover from his injury, and Saint can't stay in Sai City. If you are in Tiannan, how should Sai City deal with itself? You should think about it. If the Wang family of Beihai goes crazy and this place becomes a breakthrough, the future of the Li family. It's okay." Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said quietly, "Even if Martial Uncle can't recover for the time being, even if you and Saint are not here, even if I am in Tiannan, Sai City is still invincible." In the dark, Li Tianlan stretched out his palm. An incomparably dazzling and resplendent rainbow light suddenly bloomed from his palm. The sword intent all over the sky rolled up the flying snow outside the window in an instant. Extremely messy. Situ Tsongyue tightened her body completely out of instinct. Her eyes were fixed on Li Tianlan's palm. A small sword with a brilliant color and an incomparably exquisite and perfect shape spun continuously in his hand. Indifferent, proud, and awe-inspiring. At this moment, Li Tianlan almost had no sense of existence. But this spinning little sword brought Situ Tsongyue a kind of unparalleled danger. Li Tianlan's palm moved. The little sword spinning in his palm rose in an instant, bringing up flying snow all over the sky. The shining sword energy of thousands of meters tore the night sky. It was like a long rainbow. The dazzling sword light crossed the whole Sai City, kept flying, and finally landed at the end of Sai City. It stood straight in the snow, facing the direction of Snow Country, becoming more and more quiet and proud. "This is the startling sword. It will protect Sai City and the north end of Jianghu state on our behalf," Li Tianlan said. "The 13th floor. Startling sword." Situ Tsongyue looked at him quietly, her eyes extremely complicated. At this moment, her mind was full of the words that Deep Dream brought to her after returning from Yuzhou. The silver moonlight moved Beihai. Startling sword shown on Jianghu State. She didn't expect that the first sword of the second sentence would land here. The most suitable place. Chapter 670. At dusk, Qin Wei-bai sent off the last group of guests of Prince Yong's mansion with a smile and elegantly gathered the hair on her forehead. She wore a dignified and simple light-colored cheongsam, and her once loose black hair was tied into a ponytail. She stood in front of the gate of the ancient prince's mansion without any makeup, facing the approaching dusk. She was indifferent, but with an indescribable beauty and holiness. That touch of white, which had once filled the dark world, was aloof, cold, and powerful. Now it seemed that she really came to the world for the first time. Because she was willing, the mystery began to disappear little by little, but the calm and even wise temperament became more and more perfect. She just stood there. She was graceful, quiet and calm, elegant and delicate, and calm. She had skin of ice and bones of jade, a fairy-like appearance, and was extremely beautiful and peerless. From inside to outside, she had no shortcomings. The afterglow of the setting sun devoured the remaining light between heaven and earth. Less than 10 meters behind Qin Wei-bai, Flaming Fire stood there, looking at the perfect back with extremely cold eyes. Flaming Fire woke up yesterday, when Li Tianlan officially left Beihai and entered Liaodong from Longjiang to Sai City. Her extremely weak breath was actually not seriously injured. It could even be said that she was one of the least injured invincible realm experts in the chaos of Eastern Europe. As many outsiders guessed, Flaming Fire just woke up and went to Qin Wei-bai's side. Although she didn't have much combat power for the time being, her attitude seemed to have fully demonstrated that she was still loyal to Qin Wei-bai. But no one knew that Flaming Fire had never said a word to Qin Wei-bai since she came to her side. The dim yellow light in the sky gradually disappeared. At the moment when day and night alternated, a gust of wind blew over Prince Yong's mansion. The autumn wind went all the way north, rolling up the flowers, plants, and green leaves in the prince's mansion. Flaming Fire raised her head and glanced at it expressionlessly. The space was twisting and deforming quietly. All the way forward, she passed by Flaming Fire without most people in the prince's mansion noticing. The autumn wind between heaven and earth stopped beside Flaming Fire for a moment. Flaming Fire nodded indifferently. As if she had said hello, the autumn wind gradually dissipated, leaving no trace. Qin Wei-bai turned around and happened to see Flaming Fire nodding. She smiled and took the initiative to say, "Is he here?" Flaming Fire glanced at her and nodded. Then closed the door. Qin Wei-bai's voice was soft and unhurried, with a hint of exhaustion. "I won't be seeing any guests today." The Prince of Yong's residence had guests every day. From the day Li Tianlan destroyed the Tang family in Yuzhou, but Jianghu State remained silent. The first group of guests came to visit. Heavenly Light Spirit Lock Platform. More and more people came to the Prince of Yong's residence, and their statuses grew higher and higher. It had only been 2 days since Li Tianlan left Mount Dibing, and the people who came to Prince Yong's mansion almost had to line up. It was impossible for them not to know that they couldn't see Li Tianlan here. But they all scrambled to come here to show their attitude, and at the same time, brought valuable gifts. It was impossible for her to satisfy everyone, but she tried her best not to disappoint them. Her methods were calm and natural. It was the first time for most people to see this famous goddess. She was not cold and aloof, nor was she arrogant and detached from the crowd. Her every move could be said to be impeccable. Although everyone who left did not get the promise Qin Wei-bai made on behalf of Li Tianlan, most of them gained something. As more and more people came to visit, Qin Wei-bai's name gradually spread, so more uneasy people began to come to visit her. In just a few days' time, Qin Wei-bai's name had been spread out, so more people began to visit her with uneasiness. In just a few days, many people already knew that Prince Yong's mansion had a beautiful but good-tempered hostess who was easy to get along with. Flaming Fire witnessed all this in one day. Her eyes were getting colder and colder. Seeing that Qin Wei-bai was about to close the door, she suddenly said, "Don't close the door." The decision that had been hesitating for a long time seemed to become clear and certain at this moment. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm leaving." Qin Wei-bai was stunned and looked at Flaming Fire. She was silent for a while, then chuckled, "Isn't it good to stay with me? I don't want to be a shadow anymore." Flaming Fire said quietly, "And I can't keep up with your pace." "It's the same." Qin Wei-bai said calmly, "It's the same." "It's not the same." Flaming Fire's voice was full of persistence. You know it yourself. It's obviously the same. Qin Weibai's voice was also full of persistence. Flaming Fire did not speak. This question was actually meaningless. Whether it was the same or not, in her heart, it was different. Then it was different. I'm leaving, she said. In fact, she could have left Yuzhou when she had just woken up. However, coming here first and then leaving was completely different from leaving without saying goodbye. Coming here first and then leaving, at least Qin Weibai could have an explanation to the outside world. As long as Flaming Fire did not deny it, this explanation was true. Flaming Fire did not want to deny anything. She did not care what others thought. She only cared about one thing. That was different. He was truly different. Flaming Fire raised her head and looked at the lights under the night sky. Suddenly, she felt that the whole world was so strange. It was as if she had lost her pillar. She lost her direction and felt a little lonely. Qin Weibai's voice rang out. Where are you going? Flaming Fire was silent for a long time. After all, she still remembered a lot of things. She remembered that she often got up early to collect morning dew for her boss. She remembered the coffee she made for her boss in the middle of the night. She remembered the fruit she cut for her boss. She remembered the two of them flying all over the world. They met different people and encountered different dangers. She remembered the first time they met. She remembered that she told her about Li Tianlan with a smile. She talked about destiny and the past, but she did not talk about the future. There was no future. There would be no more. Flaming Fire's eyes were red. The suffocating pain in her heart twisted, with a kind of tearing feeling. She said it was the same. Maybe it was the same. But how could it be the same? In the night, Flaming Fire quickly raised her hand and said in a hoarse voice, Go to Northern Europe. Most of the time, she was Flaming Fire. Most of the time, she was also the master of Samsara Palace. No matter who she was, when the pillar in her heart collapsed, she finally remembered Northern Europe. In that chaos, there was a man who had silently loved her for many years. The man was willing to throw out the murderous weapon to protect Li Tianlan for the will of herself and Samsara Palace, and he was seriously injured. Northern Europe was now in turmoil. The dark nights were surging with undercurrents. Flaming Fire felt that it was necessary to sort out his dark nights for him when she lost her direction. She walked out of the door and looked back at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai stood inside the door, surrounded by a flourishing field of flowers and plants. The light of the street lamps outside the prince's mansion fell on Flaming Fire. It seemed warm, but it was extremely cold. The inside and outside the door seemed to be separated into two worlds by the bleak autumn. It was the past and the future, or something else. Goodbye, Flaming Fire said softly. Her voice paused and then she said, It's better not to see you again. You know why the guests come these days, and you know why there are so many guests today. Qin Weibai said, Because Tianlan fought through the whole Beihai. In this era, he is almost invincible. Because of Emperor Dong's palace, because Wei Kunlun, a new invincible realm expert in Jianghu state, is the palace master of Emperor Dong's palace, and because of you, you are also an invincible realm expert. Now in everyone's mind, there are 3 invincible realm experts in Emperor Dong's palace. You stay, and we will strengthen Emperor Dong's palace together. Isn't it good? Maybe it's good. Flaming Fire was silent for a long time, and then she said softly, But after that sword move in Eastern Europe, all this has nothing to do with me. Qin Weibai's eyes calmed down, becoming deep and bright. She asked her to stay. Flaming Fire refused. This was the truth. The truth could not be changed. So she nodded. So, then goodbye. Anyway, she laughed. You are a very good assistant, no, the best assistant. Thank you for taking care of me. Flaming Fire's eyes suddenly became cold, and even a little angry. I don't need your thanks. She stared into Qin Weibai's eyes and said word by word. There's no difference. Qin Weibai sighed softly and looked at Flaming Fire. There was understanding, sympathy, and a trace of sadness in her eyes. You know better than anyone that it's the same, exactly the same. Is it the same? Flaming Fire's eyes became excited. She tried to smile, but it was extremely cold and even a little sad. You always think it's the same? So you can enjoy that fool's love and care for you with a clear conscience, Enjoy everything in the future, command military counselor and saint with a clear conscience. Be yourself with a clear conscience, and even say thank you to me with a clear conscience. Qin Weibai looked at her quietly for a long time. Flaming Fire stood there straight, looking at Qin Weibai, and persistently waiting for her answer. Her answer was so powerful and so true, but for Flaming Fire, it was so heartbreaking. It all belongs to me. Why can't I feel at ease? Qin Weibai asked. This was her answer. Flaming Fire could not refute anything. Therefore, she could only stand there and keep sneering. She remembered a lot of things. Memories were like knives, cutting everything in the past with the cruelest strength and indifference. All the past was fragmented. It was all hers. Why couldn't she feel at ease? What was she obsessed with? It all belonged to her. Maybe I haven't done well enough. I can accept questions from any aspect. Even if you are in Northern Europe, you can also question what I will do next. Qin Weibai whispered. But there is one thing that none of you can question me. She looked at Flaming Fire proudly, cold and strong. Flawless. What belongs to me is mine. This is a fact. You can't question it. She looked at Flaming Fire and whispered, because you are not qualified. Climax. Chapter 671. The autumn wind in the twilight blew through the mansion and opened the antique door of the main hall of the mansion. Wisps of sword chi that did not seem strong but were extremely dense spread out in the main hall, silently covering the entire path from the main hall to the prince's mansion. In the main hall, Saint, who was meditating, opened his eyes. Looking at the autumn wind in the darkness, he nodded. His sword intent was still extending forward, gentle but incomparably resolute. You don't trust her? A light and gentle voice suddenly sounded in the autumn wind. The space, which had been wrinkled by the wind, became calm again. Military counselor, who was dressed in black, walked out of the darkness and walked to the bedside. The window beside the bed was half closed. Through a small gap, military counselor stood there, looking at the blurry figures of Qin Weibai and Flaming Fire in the distance. This scene was a little wretched. But military counselor was watching with great concentration. Who? Saint asked. It was not that he knew the answer, but he really did not know who the military counselor was asking about. Military counselor was silent for a while. He did not seem to know who he was referring to. After a long time, Flaming Fire walked out of the gate of the mansion. Flaming Fire is trustworthy. Military counselor said slowly, his voice a little complicated. Of course I know that. Saint laughed at himself and said, but now she is courting death. Even if Flaming Fire is trustworthy, it is inevitable that she will be impulsive. If she really takes action, she really doesn't know martial arts. Military counselor did not speak. After the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Samsara Palace could be said to have been completely destroyed. Less than 1/10 of the combatants survived. Most of them died in the strangulation of Mormons. More than half of the 12 supermasters died, and so did the master of the Samsara Palace. Now, in their small group, perhaps only military counselor could really understand Flaming Fire's feelings. Because they were the ones who would never betray him. Flaming Fire wants to leave. What do you think? Military counselor suddenly asked. Saint was a little surprised. Did she contact you? What's the connection between something that's already destined? Military counselor shook his head. Do you really think she can stay here now? Saint was silent for a long time before he said slowly, it's good that he left. The outside world won't know this news for the time being. Flaming Fire will cooperate with our publicity. For a short time, just treat her as an invincible realm expert hiding in the dark. Military counselor said. Saint nodded in acknowledgement. How's your realm? Military counselor suddenly asked. Saint was stunned for a moment and then said, no problem. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the general trend was intertwined. In that chaotic situation, the breakthrough of Saint was actually very urgent, but he had accumulated enough experience over the years, so his breakthrough could be said to be natural. Now, as long as he could stabilize his realm, he could go all the way up in the shortest time possible. His real combat capability could even catch up with the peak of the invincible realm. Dongqing Huangtu's notebook did give him great inspiration. The sword energy of the current Nirvana Swordmaster was thicker than before. It could be said that it had already surpassed the swordsmanship of Mount Shu. But the only problem was that it also took time to completely stabilize the realm of the invincible realm. The saints didn't know how long they would need, but at least for now, they didn't lack time. In the darkness, Flaming Fire's somewhat excited question came faintly along with the night wind. Military counselor and saint stopped talking. He did not show himself either. Both of them just quietly observed the confrontation between Flaming Fire and Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai's voice was calm and composed. Just as Flaming Fire said. He felt at ease. They heard Qin Weibai's final answer. You don't have the qualifications. The two of them were speechless. Flaming Fire was also speechless. In the long silence, Flaming Fire didn't say anything. She slowly turned around and slowly disappeared outside the door of the prince's mansion under the cold autumn light. Qin Weibai stood there alone, but she looked more and more perfect and firm. She's right. Saint suddenly said, we're not qualified. And it's always the same. Military counselor stood in front of the window and watched Qin Weibai turn around and walk over. He remained silent and did not speak. The ubiquitous sword intent in the prince's mansion slowly disappeared. Qin Weibai walked in steadily. Her expression didn't change at all. Her calm aura was drowned in the darkness the moment she entered the door. She frowned slightly. Brighten up, she said slowly. Military counselor, who showed his true face, was here. Naturally, the lights in the main hall couldn't be turned on. Saint gently flicked his fingers, and a clear sword light lit up in the darkness. The faint light illuminated a small area. Qin Weibai sat on the sofa in the middle of the light. After a moment of silence she asked, what's the matter? What's your plan for the future of Tianlan? Military counselor asked casually after a moment of silence. Qin Weibai glanced at military counselor coldly and said calmly, don't test me. Tianlan doesn't need any arrangement for the future. We should all remember our positions. I'm his woman. You're his subordinates. We're not qualified to arrange anything for him. We're by his side. In the future, we'll follow him. That's all. Don't you understand this? Military counselor took a deep breath and smiled. I understand. But there are still some things that need to be said. The Wang family of Beihai today. Do you have any idea about Wang Tianzong's injury? Military counselor asked. Qin Weibai really didn't understand martial arts. But to some extent, she could be said to be the person who knew the sword move in Eastern Europe the best. Knowing that sword move, she should be able to roughly judge Wang Tianzong's injury. Qin Weibai thought about it seriously and said hesitantly, if there's no accident, his injury can't recover in 3 to 5 years. This is the best situation. The worst situation was needless to say. Either Wang Tianzong died directly or his injury would be difficult to heal for the rest of his life. 3 to 5 years. Military counselor murmured to himself. Have you heard any rumors? Saint suddenly asked. With the current position of the Wang family of Beihai and some of the things they did in Eastern Europe, there were indeed some rumors in the high level of Jianghu state, but it was hard to know whether they were true or not. From this aspect, it seemed that Jianghu state could not make up its mind. Rumors. Military counselor laughed. Today, I've received calls from 9 council members, and they're all talking about the same thing. Is this considered a rumor? Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes. Saint's face changed slightly. There were only 9 council members in the Jianghu state parliament. They could be said to be the real giants with the most power and strength in Jianghu state, representing the will of the entire Jianghu state. Within one day, all 9 giants called military counselor? What did this mean? Including those in the southeast? Saint frowned and asked calmly. Of course. Military counselor nodded. He paused and continued, including summer solstice. Qin Weibai rubbed her white forehead and said softly, what's the position of those in the southeast? Of course it's the position of the southeast. Military counselor said blandly, although there are problems inside the Wang family of Beihai, in this respect, their cohesion is still extraordinary. Their cohesiveness is extraordinary, and they all hope to get my support. Of course, their words won't be so obvious, but their intentions are there. Qin Weibai and Saint looked at each other and did not speak. Military counselor's public identity and relationship with the Wang family of Beihai could be said to be very good. Although they were not strategic partners, several times of cooperation between them had always been quite pleasant. If military counselor was not military counselor and really chose to support the Wang family of Beihai, it was enough to make the entire Jianghu state restless and even afraid to take action. Those council members in the southeast hoped military counselor to support the Wang family of Beihai, and the council members of several other groups also called military counselor on the same day, naturally to test military counselor's attitude. The game between Jianghu state and the Wang family of Beihai might be extremely tragic, or it might be light. But in any case, before the official start, both Jianghu state and the Wang family of Beihai hoped to win the support of a few super heavyweight top figures with extraordinary status. Military counselor was naturally one of them, and it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the most important one. There was no doubt that military counselor saw an opportunity. Support Jianghu state, support Beihai, or be neutral. No matter what kind of attitude, with careful planning, it was promising. Although Samsara Palace had been destroyed, it was obvious that military counselor still wanted to seize this opportunity to set off a general trend similar to the chaos in Eastern Europe or the final battle of Heaven Capital. Although Samsara Palace had been destroyed, with their current strength, it was not impossible. Now they needed to discuss how to operate and what they could get in the end. Qin Weibai pondered and did not speak for a long time. What ideas do you have? Saint suddenly asked. If military counselor did not have enough ability, it would be too unworthy of his codename. Moreover, after the chaos in Eastern Europe, Saint became the sword master of Mount Shu and appeared in everyone's sight. Qin Weibai came to Li Tianlan's side. On the contrary, military counselor controlled most of their remaining or deliberately protected forces. He was a steady man. If he did not have a general idea, it was impossible for him to come to them and tell them these things. We can push it behind the scenes. Military counselor said slowly, I told Tianlan more than 3 years ago that the whole world is looking for the headquarters of Samsara Palace, but no one knows that the real headquarters of Samsara Palace is in Jianghu state. He said slowly. Obviously, he was also thinking carefully. At present, the power in my hands is enough. Do you want to flip the cards? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Samsara Palace still had countless trump cards in Jianghu state, big and small, densely packed. Only military counselor, who was absolutely trusted by the master of Samsara Palace, could hold all these trump cards in his hands and operate them in an orderly manner. Once these cards were flipped, it was enough to set off an unimaginable storm inside Jianghu state. Yes. Military counselor's voice was very calm. It's too early. Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows. Tell me your reason. I'm tired. Military counselor smiled. If these cards are flipped, it will be enough for the Li family to have the influence of its peak in an instant. I don't think it's too early now. Qin Weibai was silent. He was tired. This was the reason given by military counselor. She did not know whether such a reason was true or not, but it did not matter. The most important thing was that even if it was true, the reason why he was tired was that there was one less person. Just like Flaming Fire wanted to leave. Military counselor and Flaming Fire. They were both tired. In other words, no matter how persistent they were, no matter how real they were, in their hearts, after all, it was still different. It was really different. That was why they felt tired. Chapter 672. Qin Weibai sat on the sofa. Saint's sword radiance emitted a faint light, illuminating a small piece of darkness. She bathed in the light and was lost in thought for a long time. It seemed that she had not been as powerless as she was now for many years. Since the establishment of Samsara Palace, it had been an organization with a strong purpose. It could even be said to be an organization with only one purpose. From the beginning to the end, what everyone in Samsara Palace tried to do was to create a sky without shadows. All the plans, all the calculations, and a large number of trump cards came to an end in Mormon's eternal sword. Samsara Palace collapsed. After that the plan was blank. But even so, Samsara Palace still had a lot of power that had not been exposed and was controlled by military counselor. It didn't need a plan. Everyone knew that once military counselor used these trump cards, the Li family supported by them could definitely become the top force in Jianghu state in an instant and even recover to its peak glory. But there was a premise for all this. Such power was the power in military counselor's hands and the power of Samsara Palace. But this was not the power of the Li family. Li Tianlan firmly believed that the Li family was his. The remaining small group of Samsara Palace also firmly believed in this. But those trump cards had been buried for too long, so there were countless variables hidden inside. How to smoothly transfer this power to Li Tianlan's hands and let them really accept Li Tianlan and the Li family's leadership was the question that military counselor should think about most now. And how far Li Tianlan could go also depended on his future achievements and development. So Qin Weibai felt that it was still too early. Li Tianlan had not yet broken through to the invincible realm. He had the combat capability of the invincible realm, but his real combat capability had surpassed the ordinary invincible realm experts. With the dragon vein, after the chaos in Eastern Europe, the dragon vein on his back had completely recovered. Jianghu state was thriving, and Li Tianlan was making progress almost all the time. The sword formation of the 13-story buildings had almost integrated with him. Under such circumstances, no one knew how terrible Li Tianlan would be in the future. Who dared to guess what Li Tianlan would do in 3 years? What would happen in 5 years? This was what Qin Weibai had been looking forward to the most. This shadowless sky completely belonged to Li Tianlan. No force could put pressure on him or suppress him. The foundation of the emperor in Tiannan had begun to take shape. The right time, place, and people were all in place. This is destined to be the fastest development of Emperor Dong's palace. It was the craziest few years of the world. 3 to 5 years later, both Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace would become extremely powerful. In Qin Weibai's expectation, that would also be the most appropriate time. Both Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace had made convincing achievements. Military counselor revealed all the trump cards in his hands and sent the Li family back to its former peak. In the face of the incomparably powerful Li Tianlan, those hidden trump cards naturally knew how to choose. But now, the military counselor felt that it was time. Obviously, he wanted to take advantage of Li Tianlan's attack on the entire Beihai to use his power to set off a storm that was extremely favorable to the Li family in the game between Jianghu state and Beihai. Such a plan might not be considered hasty. But the timing was not perfect. It was impossible for the military counselor not to know this. But his reason was simple and powerful. He was tired. This was also the reason that made Qin Weibai feel the most powerless. To some extent, military counselor and flaming fire were the same. They might not be tired, but after the sword stroke in Eastern Europe, they had lost their direction. Qin Weibai could not stop flaming fire. She could not stop military counselor either. Just as she said to flaming fire. No one was qualified to question her. But she was also not qualified to restrain them. She fully understood this feeling. It was probably the feeling of being disheartened. Qin Weibai also felt a little disheartened. She felt that everything was the same. This feeling was extremely real and rational. Nothing could deny it. But both flaming fire and military counselor felt that it was different. This was their own insistence. Do you not recognize me or Tianlan? Qin Weibai asked. There was no need to ask this question. The tragic ending of Samsara Palace today was all because of Li Tianlan. But this was something that was destined when Samsara Palace was established. This kind of unequal thing, at least in their hearts, was nothing. Everyone felt that Li Tianlan's growth and future were worthy of Samsara Palace's efforts. Otherwise, Saint would not have joined Samsara Palace and become a deputy palace master. You think too much. Military counselor's voice was very sincere. His attitude was not as intense as flaming fire's, but it was also extremely firm. These years, I'm really a little tired. In fact, a long time ago, I thought about the days after retirement. That's the day I've always longed for. These things at present can be said to be my last task. It's unnecessary. Everything in my hands will be handed over to Tianlan. I will handle this matter well. How are you going to make use of this opportunity? Saint asked. The upcoming game between Jianghu state and Beihai was destined to involve the overall situation. Being in the game, this was an opportunity for everyone. Would the 800,000 square kilometers of territory in the northeast become the real foundation for the Wang family of Beihai to flourish, or would it become the springboard for Jianghu state to completely take over Beihai province? This was bound to be a question that everyone would pay close attention to. At this moment, a person suddenly came to Saint's mind. Dongqing Wudi's wife, Bai Qingqian. She was transferred from Qinzhou to Liaodong more than 3 years ago to serve as the speaker of Liaodong, and that was shortly after Qin Weibai contacted the Dongqing clan. So, was this move the Samsara Palace's foresight or the Dongqing clan's foresight? Longjiang, Liaodong, Guangdong. When the Wang family of Beihai occupied the general trend of Longjiang, once the chaos broke out, Liaodong would be the first to bear the brunt. How would the military counselor make use of this opportunity? I think it won't be long before the higher-ups of Jianghu State send out a clear signal. Beihai and Jianghu State. Such a game can't have a winner or loser in a short time. Once the game starts, there are opportunities everywhere. We should find the most suitable entry point for us now. Military counselor said slowly. Qin Weibai's mind was in a mess. She didn't think much about it and said subconsciously, the game hasn't started yet. How would you know what the entry point is? Military counselor and Saint looked at her at the same time. We don't know. Military counselor answered her question, but this game is like a point that leads to different endings. This is something that is destined to happen. As for the process, it can be created. We don't need to know the whole process. What we need to discuss is what kind of entry point we need to create in this process. What she could create was naturally the most certain. Qin Weibai was silent for a long time. Saint and military counselor stopped talking. After a long time, Qin Weibai sighed tiredly and said softly, Tianlan is coming back. We'll discuss this when he comes back. Military counselor frowned and was about to speak. Qin Weibai's cell phone rang. She took out her cell phone and answered it. After listening for a while, she put down the phone with a strange look. What's wrong? Saint asked aloud. There's news from the hospital. Qin Weibai frowned slightly. Li Guangtu woke up. Chapter 673. When he struggled to sit up from the hospital bed, Li Guangtu's consciousness was in a blank state for a long time. The hospital at night was quiet. His bed was near the window. In the sky by the window, the silver moon hung high, and the cold and bright light enveloped him. Everything in his sight seemed to be in a trance. He opened his eyes and stared blankly out of the window, not moving for a long time. It seemed that a nurse who was making ward rounds late at night came in, and then rushed out in surprise. Li Guangtu had been sitting there, not speaking, not moving, and even without any thoughts. His figure gradually merged with the moonlight and became extremely indifferent. The doctor rushed to the ward at the first time and carefully seemed to want to check his physical condition. A hazy and almost weak sword light appeared around the figure shrouded in moonlight. The sword light, which had no lethality at all, seriously injured two doctors on the spot. The ward was completely quiet. Under the moonlight, blood flowed down Li Guangtu's body. The sword intent that had just been forcibly released directly affected the injury in his body. The severe pain and tearing feeling spread from every part of his body. Li Guangtu, who was a little sluggish, finally frowned and looked down at his bleeding body. Thinking and consciousness began to return with the pain. Li Guangtu took a deep breath and turned his eyes. The sound of the instruments in the ward was still ringing. The ward he was in was not a single room. Less than 5 meters away from him, there was an extremely delicate and beautiful figure lying on the ground, unconscious. Her long black hair was scattered on the white bedsheets. She lay there motionlessly, so quiet that she was like a phantom. The instrument beside her showed her heart rate and blood pressure. Li Guangtu glanced at it and laughed at himself. His smile seemed to be distorted because of the pain, and he looked a little crazy. Li Shi. This was the woman he had once loved deeply, but she had ruined everything for him. Li Guangtu never dreamed that the first person he saw after he woke up from serious injuries would be Li Shi. Li Guangtu's eyes gradually became indifferent. He stared at Li Shi indifferently, and his eyes were full of disgust. Even if she stood by his side in Eastern Europe. Even if she resisted the pressure of Kunlun City in Eastern Europe to draw a sword for him. But she betrayed him. The wife of the governor of Kunlun City. Li Guangtu smiled again. How beautiful a woman was. However, the disgust in his eyes became clearer and clearer. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. He felt a little sick. There was the sound of the door being pushed open. With light footsteps, Qin Weibai walked into the ward with Saint. Li Guangtu shifted his gaze. The disgust in his eyes quickly faded. But Qin Weibai was still keenly aware of his emotions. The smile on her face instantly froze, and her heart sank at the same time. She stood there, looking extremely awkward. "Where am I?" Li Guangtu asked directly, because fresh blood flowed down his body. At this moment, he was completely awake. Even though he was extremely weak, his every move still carried an extremely obvious offensive nature. "Yuzhou." Qin Weibai said nothing. It was the saint who answered him. Li Guangtu raised his eyebrows for a moment and sneered. "The capital of Jianghu state. Why? I'm a traitor now in Yuzhou. Why didn't anyone catch me and bring me back for trial? I'm awake now. Why are you here instead of the elites of Kunlun City?" Saint was silent. Qin Weibai was silent. Li Guangtu's smile became more and more obvious and mocking. "Oh, I forgot that the hostess of Kunlun City is here now. Why? Is Jianghu State going to let her take me back? Now I wake up earlier than her. Is Jianghu State very disappointed? Do you hate her?" Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Now Li Guangtu was obviously a little emotional, but everything he showed in an emotional state was closer to his true mind. Li Guangtu froze for a moment. He looked at Qin Weibai in surprise. He didn't know what his awakening meant for the time being. But in the situation in Eastern Europe, he could still live, which was enough to show that there was a problem in the Wang family of Beihai, even a big problem. What problem was more important than Wang Tianzong's own state? After a little speculation, Li Guangtu could roughly know Wang Tianzong's current state. The Wang family of Beihai was unstable internally. It was not difficult to guess what attitude Jianghu state would have. There were more and more rumors in Jianghu state now. But really, how could it be a rumor? Beihai was too strong. Jianghu state would definitely take action when it found the right time. It was impossible for Li Guangtu not to think of this. He woke up at this time, and there were too many things to say to Qin Weibai. If he was willing to cooperate, the Purgatory of Heaven capital could play an unexpected role. But now, standing in front of him, Qin Weibai's first sentence was to ask him if he hated Li Shi. Was this an important question? This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Li Guangtu was at a loss for a moment, and then shook his head. I hated her, but I don't hate her now. He was telling the truth. He had loved and hated this woman. But now this kind of extreme emotion would no longer exist. He just felt that Li Shi was disgusting, really disgusting. Is it because of that sword stroke? Qin Weibai asked seriously, but if you want to hate her, it shouldn't have started at that time, right? Li Guangtu was inexplicable. He couldn't figure out why Qin Weibai was entangled in this topic. But he had just woken up and had not recovered from his serious injury, so he was a little relaxed. Why do you say that? I know the battle that year, Qin Weibai said. I even know the list of masters who participated in the battle that year. In the face of that kind of siege, no matter how you look at it, you will lose without a doubt. In the end, you will not have the possibility of winning. But if you are in a stalemate in the end, you may not die, but Li Shi's sword ended everything for you. Qin Weibai looked into his eyes. She was very serious, but with a trace of tension. I have simulated that battle many times. Different environments, different moves, and different situations tell me that at the moment when Li Shi pierced your heart with a long sword, if you wanted to take action, it was absolutely possible to kill Li Shi at that moment. But you didn't do that. Why? Li Guangtu's brows furrowed more tightly. I can't do it. He was expressionless and said in a cold voice. It's impossible that you can't do it. Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu very seriously. You can't bear to, right? Even at that time, you can't bear to kill her. Li Guangtu looked at Qin Weibai coldly and did not speak. Do you regret it? Qin Weibai continued to ask. Or have you ever regretted it? In the almost suffocating silence, Li Guangtu suddenly smiled. What do you think? Saint took a step forward and seemed to want to pull Qin Weibai away. Qin Weibai suddenly waved her hand to let Saint step back. She looked at Li Guangtu closely and said word by word, I don't know. She really didn't know. But this was her obsession. I don't regret it. Li Guangtu said faintly, this is the thing I regret the most in my life. He looked at Li Shi. Such a disgusting woman, I couldn't bear to kill her at that time. Oh, I should have smashed her into pieces at that time. He looked at the unconscious Li Shi, and his eyes became colder. Qin Weibai seemed to have lost all her strength in an instant, and her face suddenly became as pale as paper. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 674. Disgust was a very common emotion. But when a person hated something he had liked or even loved deeply, to some extent, it was equivalent to denying everything he had liked before. Those pursuits, those passions, those affections. Everything was completely denied, and it was cold and cruel. This was different from hatred. Qin Weibai actually hoped that Li Guangtu had some hatred for Li Shi, because it meant that he still hadn't let go of the past that he had protected and devoted himself to. The so-called hatred was nothing more than being unable to accept it. But in Li Guangtu's eyes and tone, she really didn't see any hatred. There was only indifference and disgust. Have you ever thought that maybe she had no choice but to do what she did back then? Maybe she was coerced by someone? Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and was silent for a long time before she asked tentatively. At this moment, she was really not strong at all. She even looked a little delicate and pitiful. For example, her father at that time, Qin Weibai said softly, and her and your child. Li Guangtu looked at her silently. There was no emotion in his eyes. In the extremely perturbed waiting, he felt the blood flowing through his body and finally gave his answer. Do I need to know? The simplest rhetorical question. But Qin Weibai froze there for a long time. At that time I was already dead. Li Guangtu smiled and talked about the sword in that year, and his tone didn't even have the disgust he had just shown. She may have been involuntarily, but at that time, her sword pierced my chest. I was already dead. Does a dead person need to know these things? Even if she has many explanations, which are inspiring and sad, what's the use? I'm already dead. After she killed me, would she say to my corpse that she was involuntarily and then hope that the dead person would forgive her? Some things couldn't be explained. Qin Weibai finally understood why Li Shi was always silent when Li Shi and Li Guangtu met more than once many years later. Even in Eastern Europe, when she stood beside Li Guangtu and faced Wang Tianzong, she had no choice. She was coerced. She couldn't help it. But everything was her own position. In fact, she killed Li Guangtu. Li Guangtu could come back to life. This was his ability, and it had nothing to do with Li Shi. No one understood what she had endured in her heart. No one could understand what was going through Li Guangtu's mind when her sword pierced through his heart. So many years. So many grievances. Qin Weibai muttered to herself. I didn't give it to you. Li Guangtu said indifferently. I don't owe her anything. Even if I did, I've paid it off back then. You're right, I could have killed her back then. But I can't bear to. Regret is a matter for the future. She betrayed me back then, but I spared her life. Haven't I paid her back? It's her own choice to suffer all these years of grievance. If she really doesn't want to suffer. Li Guangtu smiled and glanced at Li Shi, who was still unconscious. Why doesn't she die? But she helped you in Eastern Europe. Qin Weibai said. The moonlight shone on her face. Her face was so pale that it was almost transparent. I am very grateful to myself. Li Guangtu nodded. She can help me because I didn't kill her back then. She owes me the life I gave her. Do you expect me to forgive her just because of that? Qin Weibai's body shook slightly. Her brain was in a mess, and everything was blank. Her hands were clenched into fists, and her nails had pierced into her palms. Blood dripped down her palms and dripped on the floor. Li Guangtu suddenly raised his eyebrows. Saint, who was standing closely behind Qin Weibai, suddenly raised his head. The majestic sword intent instantly filled every corner of the ward. The ward was quiet. Not a sound could be heard. Saint was silent for a long time before he calmly said, Boss, this question is meaningless. You seem to care about this question? Li Guangtu looked at Qin Weibai with some playfulness and said thoughtfully, Why? Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and did not speak. What do you want from me? Li Guangtu did not seem to be obsessed with the answer. His voice returned to indifference, and there was even a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Have you ever thought? Qin Weibai's voice trembled a little, but she still continued the original topic. She actually had a lot of things to say here. The identity of Li Guangtu meant too many things. In the next general trend, if used well, he was definitely the most important figure. The cooperation between the Samsara Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital, the Li family and the Samsara Palace, the Emperor East Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital, Tiannan, and even the Wang family of Beihai. As long as the two sides could cooperate, there were too many things that could be done. However, the question about Li Shi obviously interfered with Qin Weibai's thinking. Her heart was in a mess. In such a state, it was obviously not suitable to talk about any cooperation with Li Guangtu. She pointed at Li Shi with her blood-stained fingers. She has had a bad life these years. Who will understand her situation and everything she has endured? The blood dripped on the ground. Li Guangtu was silent for a moment and said faintly, "No one understands." "Are you saying that she deserves all of this?" Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and asked. Li Guangtu was expressionless and did not speak for a long time. Qin Weibai stood up and looked at Li Shi. Her eyes flashed with countless complex emotions. Li Shi lay quietly. For so many years, it seemed that it was the first time that she had slept so peacefully. "I can understand her." Qin Weibai was silent for a long time before she said softly. Li Guangtu was not wrong. Li Shi was also not wrong. In the most unfeeling world, there were always some people who lived the most affectionate. She could understand everything about her. "If you want, I can change a ward for her." Qin Weibai turned around and looked at Li Guangtu. Li Guangtu nodded expressionlessly without any hesitation. Qin Weibai stood in front of Li Shi for a long time before she turned and left. Saint looked back at Li Guangtu, did not speak, and closed the door of the ward. The moonlight shone down softly. The whole room was cold. Li Guangtu was silent for a long time alone, and suddenly said, "When do you want to see it?" "Why, when your woman and your subordinates are here, do you have any concerns that you can't say?" Li Shi was still asleep. The moonlight gently fluctuated in the dark corner that could not be found. A figure came out of the darkness and became clearer and clearer. "I just don't think our next negotiation should be heard by anyone." Li Tianlan stood in front of Li Guangtu and said calmly. Chapter 675. Li Tianlan. Li Guangtu. No matter what kind of relationship they had, because of the Li family, the two of them were destined to have countless entanglements in their lives. They really should have a good talk. But Li Tianlan paid attention to his wording. Li Guangtu also paid attention to Li Tianlan's wording. He meant negotiation. No matter what the two talked about next, this word was rational and a little cold. Blood stained Li Guangtu's hospital gown. His body did not move, and the slowly oozing blood had stopped. He sat on the bed, covered with moonlight, looking at Li Tianlan standing in the dark, and thought a lot in an instant. The Purgatory of Heaven capital that belonged to him. The Emperor Dong's palace that belonged to Li Tianlan. The Li family was in the middle. A lot of things were pushed forward by an invisible force the moment his identity was exposed, constantly moving forward. Whether it was a collision or fusion, it was something that had to happen. Such a negotiation would come sooner or later. But for Li Guangtu now, the timing of this negotiation was too outrageous. Under the moonlight, Li Guangtu looked up at Li Tianlan and said expressionlessly, "What qualifications do you have to negotiate with me?" "You're still alive." Li Tianlan said calmly, "Then I'm qualified." Li Guangtu was alive because Wang Tianzong did not kill him, and also because Li Tianlan saved him. The faint darkness in the ward surrounded Li Tianlan. His outline was a little blurred, but his voice was extremely clear. "I don't owe you anything." "Indeed." Li Guangtu was silent for a long time before he nodded. He saved Li Tianlan once in Eastern Europe. Li Tianlan also saved him once in Eastern Europe. They owed each other nothing. The silent ward was filled with indifference. Li Tianlan looked at Li Guangtu quietly. From Beihai to Sai City, from Sai City to Yuzhou, and then to this ward. His body was extremely tired, but his mind was clearer and calmer. Facing Li Guangtu, there was only calmness in his heart. Were they father and son? Li Tianlan didn't know, but now he didn't want to avoid anything anymore. He didn't know, so he asked directly, "Are you my father?" Li Guangtu gave him a cold look. "If that's the case." Li Tianlan smiled and pointed at Li Shi. "You, me, her, and we are a family of 3? He found it hard to believe that he could calmly discuss his background in front of the people who were most likely to be his parents. Regardless, I need an answer. Li Guangtu did not hesitate this time. You didn't hide it. He gave Li Tianlan the truest answer. No. Li Tianlan fell silent. After a long while he smiled and said, I see. Li Guangtu's answer seemed to have cleared up some of the confusion he had for a long time. Why couldn't he get Li Guangtu's approval? Why was it not recognized by the purgatory of heaven capital? Why did some people in the Li family think he didn't deserve to own the Li family? The reason was simple, because he and Li Guangtu weren't father and son. In that case, our negotiation is even more necessary. He said calmly. What do you want to talk about? Li Guangtu's voice became more and more indifferent. Let's talk about the Li family. Li Tianlan took 2 steps forward. At the place where moonlight and darkness met, his figure suddenly became extremely real. It doesn't matter whether we are father and son or not. It doesn't matter whether my surname is Li or not. I don't care about these questions. But there is one thing I care about. He looked into Li Guangtu's eyes. No matter who I am, the Li family must be mine. Li Guangtu raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. I want the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Tianlan's voice was extremely calm. In your dreams. Without any hesitation, Li Guangtu gave his attitude. His smile was a little weak, but his voice was very firm. If your surname is not Li, why do you want the Li family that belongs to me? Because my name is Li Tianlan all these years. Li Tianlan looked at him and said, this will not change in the future. You ask me why? Ha! Why? If my surname is not Li, why have I borne everything for the Li family for so many years? Li Guangtu turned his head and said lightly, you shouldn't ask me this question. Indeed, he shouldn't ask him. If he wanted to ask, maybe he should ask Li Honghe, his biological parents, and all the people who made that decision at that time. I will ask them. Li Tianlan said lightly, but the answer is not important. What matters is that I must get the Li family, the complete Li family. Again, you don't deserve it. Li Guangtu said coldly, you have your grievances, but the Li family doesn't owe you anything. You may have suffered a lot, but when has the Li family ever treated you badly? The 24 moves of sword, the map of God of War, and your current martial arts are closely related to the Li family. You are now the chosen one in the dark world. If there is no Li family, if you are not Li Tianlan, you will get nothing. Li Tianlan's life should not be like this. Li Guangtu knew this. Now Li Tianlan also knew this. Perhaps as Li Guangtu said, if it were not for the Li family, he could not learn the 24 moves of sword. There would be the title of the chosen one in him. But without these, his life would also be wonderful. He would be the top young master in the whole Jianghu state, living in luxury and wealth. His life would be extremely stable to a position that was enough to make people tremble. He would not have to wander on the edge of life and death, nor would he have to struggle with the so-called general trend. His road was extremely smooth, and he could also shine. What was wrong with that kind of life? He exchanged that kind of life for everything he had today, which was not a gain at all. It really didn't matter whether his surname was Li or not. What mattered was that in the past 20 years, under countless pressures and expectations, he was Li Tianlan, and he had always been Li Tianlan. If he couldn't get the Li family, then what was his past 20 years worth of time? I am the chosen one, Li Tianlan said calmly. In this case, you should be more relieved to hand over the purgatory of heaven capital to me. After all, no matter who I am, my surname is Li now. Will you kill me? Li Guangtu was silent for a while and suddenly asked. Now he was seriously injured and had no combat power at all. If Li Tianlan wanted to kill him, it could be said to be effortless. If I insist on not handing over the purgatory of heaven capital to you, will you kill me? He asked again. No. Li Tianlan said lightly. I'm not surprised by such an answer. Li Guangtu nodded. So you shouldn't be surprised by my answer. I can't hand over the purgatory of heaven capital to you. You are the future chosen one, but now in my eyes, you are nothing. When my injury heals, no, as long as I recover half of my combat power. It doesn't make sense. Li Tianlan said calmly, After the chaos in Eastern Europe, you should realize this. You, Wang Tianzong, you are both outdated. When everyone was guessing how powerful Li Tianlan was today, Li Tianlan finally revealed his trump card in front of Li Guangtu. Not to mention half of your combat power, even if you recover to your peak state, you may not be able to do anything to me. He did not enter the invincible realm, but he had a sword in his hand. In the darkness, he raised his hand. The exquisite Shenyuan sword appeared in his palm, trembling meekly. I may not be your opponent, but with it, what can you do? Li Guangtu looked up at Li Tianlan's palm. The Shenyuan sword was slowly rotating, extremely elegant, but extremely sharp. A very obvious astonishment appeared on Li Guangtu's face. His expression was as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. This thing, his pupils contracted for a moment, and he said incredulously, how could this thing be in your hands? Divine Emperor of 9 Heavens. Chapter 676. Every emotion had a priority. The moment he saw the Shenyuan sword, Li Guangtu's eyes were filled with undisguised fear, but the most obvious emotion was astonishment. It was a kind of absurdity that he had never thought of. In the face of the Shenyuan sword, he blinked hard and even shook his head. In the state of the sword formation, the finger-sized Shenyuan sword rose and fell slightly in Li Tianlan's hand. The dark sword formation slowly rotated, with a kind of profound and extremely profound sword intent. Sharp and awe-inspiring, it contained all the sword intent, but it seemed to repel everything. It was a pure sword, irresistible. Now it's my sword, not in my hand. Where is it? Li Tianlan asked. Li Guangtu was obviously stunned, and his tone was a little sarcastic. You call it a sword? Well, even if it's a sword, what you snatched is also yours, right? Li Tianlan looked inexplicable. The Shenyuan sword and the 13-story building recognized each other as its master was a little strange, but he didn't snatch anything at all. Snatch? From whom? Do you know it? Li Tianlan looked at Li Guangtu, and his tone was a little nervous. The 13-story building and the Shenyuan sword belonged to Dongqing Huangtu's sword formation. Li Guangtu knew the Shenyuan sword and its origin. Did it mean that Li Guangtu knew Dongqing Huangtu? Everything seemed to be connected in an instant. He was not Li Guangtu's son. The master of Samsara Palace's support for him came from Dongqing Huangtu. He thought of the Dongqing clan's almost unrequited kindness to him. Who was Dongqing Huangtu to him? Do you know this sword? Li Tianlan raised his palm slightly, and the Shenyuan sword floated closer to Li Guangtu. At that moment, Li Guangtu's body suddenly became completely tense. He stared at the Shenyuan sword in front of him. After a long silence, he smiled mockingly. What's so strange about it? This sword? Who doesn't know it? You know this sword, Li Tianlan said slowly. Then do you know the previous owner of this sword? Li Guangtu frowned. For so many years, the owner of this sword had been standing at the highest place in the dark world. Everyone could see and hear him. What kind of idiotic question was that? Tell me the origin of this sword, Li Tianlan said slowly. Li Guangtu suddenly smiled. You want to talk about your background? The look in his eyes was very strange. You've been with that old guy since you were a child. Didn't he tell you the history of Jianghu state? I don't know what you mean. Li Tianlan was a little surprised. I think you are. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. It's boring. Li Guangtu shook his head impatiently and looked at the Shenyuan sword floating in front of him. His eyes flashed and he didn't speak for a long time. The moment he saw the Shenyuan sword, he really realized that the era that belonged to him and Wang Tianzong had finally passed. A new era had arrived. His injury was extremely serious. The appearance of this sword in Li Tianlan's hand showed that Wang Tianzong's injury could only be more serious than his. Li Guangtu believed that he was at least 80% sure that he could recover to his peak state, but it would take time. A very, very long time passed. Even if Li Tianlan would not kill him, even if there were no accidents during the process, what could he do after he recovered to his peak? If he were in his peak state now, such a Li Tianlan, such a sword would still not pose a threat to him. But during the period of his slow recovery, Li Tianlan would grow, and so would the sword. As Li Tianlan said, Even if he recovered from his injury, what could he do to Li Tianlan? Li Tianlan waved his hand. The Xianyuan sword floating in front of Li Guangtu fell into Li Tianlan's hand, docile and cheerful. Li Guangtu watched this scene quietly. He really couldn't figure out why this sword was so docile in Li Tianlan's hand. How long had it been since the war in Eastern Europe? If this sword was really alive, it was really enough to change one's mind. How is Wang Tianzong's injury? Li Guangtu suddenly asked. The Xianyuan sword appeared in Li Tianlan's hand, which meant that Wang Tianzong might have suffered unimaginable injuries. But Li Guangtu did not believe that he would die. With the absolute dominance he showed in Eastern Europe, Li Guangtu also did not believe that there was any power that could kill him. I don't know. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said lightly, but it should be more serious than yours. I don't think the dark world will see him again for a long time. So is this the reason why you are arrogant and supercilious now? Li Guangtu asked. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and did not speak. Arrogant and domineering? Supercilious? He didn't know what Li Guangtu was referring to. What did you do in Beihai province? Li Guangtu looked at the Xianyuan sword in Li Tianlan's hand, and his voice was a little erratic. Li Tianlan's eyes became extremely cold in an instant. If what he did in Beihai was arrogant and supercilious in Li Guangtu's eyes, then what was Li Guangtu's position now? I just went there to ask for an explanation. Li Tianlan said lightly. By the way, I went to their so-called 7 sword-holding families. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. I went around in the clan. By the way, even though he was mentally prepared, Li Guangtu still showed a surprised expression. Of course, he knew what it meant. It meant that after Eastern Europe, Li Tianlan fought through the entire Beihai. Have you seen the old bastard of the Jiang family? DK. Li Tianlan said, he died. The almost dead silence lasted for a long time. Li Guangtu took a deep breath and said calmly, so you don't leave any room for negotiation? I didn't go to the stage of formidable person. Li Tianlan said. Li Guangtu smiled sarcastically. His eyes flickered and he said thoughtfully, in that case, there has been a change in the Wang family of Beihai. You can come back, which means that summer solstice didn't take action, and the hidden danger in the Wang family of Beihai broke out with Wang Tianzong's serious injury? Li Tianlan did not speak. These were things he had known for a long time. But Li Tianlan suddenly raised his eyebrows. The problems of the Wang family of Beihai, the problems of Jianghu state and Beihai were indeed becoming more and more obvious. But Li Guangtu had just woken up. His memory still stayed in the period that ended in Eastern Europe. Then how did he know that he had been to Beihai province? Do you know that I have been to Beihai province? Li Tianlan asked. Li Guangtu looked at Li Tianlan mockingly, and his eyes finally fell on the Xianyuan sword that was rotating around him. If you haven't been to the Wang family of Beihai, how did you get this thing? Li Tianlan felt a little incredible. You mean this sword belongs to the Wang family of Beihai? Do you still think this is a sword? Li Guangtu sneered and said, you snatched it and turned it into a sword, and then you can really deceive yourself into thinking that this is your sword. Li Tianlan looked at Li Guangtu. Li Guangtu was also looking at Li Tianlan. At this moment, Li Tianlan finally confirmed that although both of them were talking about this sword, they seemed to be talking to themselves. Li Guangtu didn't understand what Li Tianlan said. Li Tianlan didn't understand what Li Guangtu said either. The Xianyuan sword once again floated between them. Li Tianlan looked at Li Guangtu and asked seriously, if this is not a sword, then what is it? Li Guangtu glanced at Li Tianlan as if he was looking at an idiot. But this time, he did not avoid Li Tianlan's question, nor did he ask Li Tianlan to turn over the history of Jianghu state. His answer was extremely clear and certain. What kind of sword is this? Li Guangtu said coldly. This is the human emperor. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 677. Human Emperor. The first of the 12 murderous weapons in the Dark World. It was a murderous weapon that had belonged exclusively to the Wang family of Beihai for hundreds of years. Facing the Xianyuan sword, Li Guangtu told Li Tianlan in a very certain tone that the Xianyuan sword was the human emperor. How was this possible? A huge surprise hit Li Tianlan's mind. This was something that he had never expected. Perhaps it was because he was too surprised that he looked extremely calm. Which Ren Huang? Looking at Li Kuang-tu, he asked seriously. Of course it's the human emperor of the Wang family of Beihai. Li Kuang-tu said coldly, you killed DK in the North Sea province and stole the human emperor. Have you not considered the situation in the future? Li Tianlan remained silent. Was the Shen Yuan sword the human emperor? Li Tianlan didn't know. He had never seen the scene when the murderous weapon from the Wang family of Beihai fired. He hadn't even seen the real body of the human emperor. However, Li Kuang-tu had seen it before. Before him, the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai had been close for hundreds of years. The Li family was no stranger to the human emperor. In recent decades, the human emperor had opened fire 3 times, and one of them was even shot by his grandfather, Li Honghe, with the human emperor in his hand. Therefore, Li Kuang-tu's tone was extremely certain that he would not be mistaken. The Shen Yuan sword was the human emperor. Moreover, after devouring the devil army, it was now a human emperor that could barely fire again. The most unreplicable aspect of the evil demon army was to implant the remaining materials of the murderous weapons into the human body. After a long period of freezing, the metabolism of those experts who were infinitely close to death would be reduced to the lowest. The remaining trace of vitality would fuse with the spirituality of the materials of the murderous weapons, and in a short period of time, they could erupt with absolute combat power. The Devil Legion's strongest ability was self-destruction. The long period of freezing was enough for the materials of the murderous weapons in their bodies to gather enough energy, and they would explode instantly. Although it could not be compared to a complete murderous weapon, it could be regarded as an attack from a murderous weapon that was not in its peak state. The suppression of the 13 floors on the Devil Army lay in the fact that each sword could absorb the power unleashed by the murderous weapons. In fact, it could no longer be considered as absorption. It could even be said to be engulfing. The Shen Yuan sword, which had devoured the Devil Army, had regained its spirituality once again. It had reached the point where it could barely be used again. Devour. Devour? A light suddenly flashed in Li Tianlan's mind. The human emperor had been made into the coldness of 9 states by the Wang family of Beihai in the chaos of Eastern Europe. But whether it was the coldness of the 9 states or the human emperor, the most important material was the same. In the hands of the master of Samsara Palace, the 13-story pagoda became an eternal sword that cut through the sky. The 13th pagoda could devour the energy of the Devil Army. Why couldn't he devour the human emperor? If that was the case. Li Tianlan looked at the Shen Yuan sword. The black blade was still spinning slightly, expressing its docility to Li Tianlan all the time. Li Tianlan suddenly felt a little ridiculous. If Li Kuang-tu did feel the aura of the human emperor on the Shen Yuan sword, that was to say, in the last sword strike in Eastern Europe, the 13 floors pagoda really swallowed up the human emperor? The leader of the 12 malefic weapons was swallowed? It seemed that this was the only way to explain why the Shen Yuan sword was so docile towards him. Because the Shen Yuan sword was not the human emperor, but a sword that had devoured the human emperor? Li Tianlan suddenly found himself unable to explain these problems. However, he did not intend to explain anything to Li Kuang-tu. He took a step forward. The Shen Yuan sword flew back and merged into nothingness. Li Tianlan took out a cigarette and handed it to Li Kuang-tu. Do you want one? Li Kuang-tu reached out and took it. Li Tianlan lit it for him. I'm not the one who should think about the situation. Li Tianlan temporarily put aside his doubts about the Shen Yuan sword. After all, this was not his main purpose today. It should be you. Have you thought about the situation in the future? This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. My situation? Li Kuang-tu raised his eyebrows slightly. You are Li Kuang-tu. Li Tianlan said calmly, the whole dark world knows about it, but the purgatory of heaven capital is still in East Island. The pale white smoke lingered in the bright moonlight. Li Tianlan looked at Li Kuang-tu. If you go back to East Island and heaven capital, what kind of stance will you take? What kind of attitude will East Island have towards Li Kuang-tu? Li Kuang-tu was silent. He just woke up and couldn't judge the situation outside, but it didn't mean that he didn't realize the seriousness of this problem. Li Kuang-tu and deity. One person, 2 identities, but they were 2 completely different things. Since his identity was exposed, both Jianghu State and East Island had been silent about it. Now that Li Kuang-tu woke up, He naturally knew what it meant. Both Jianghu State and East Island were waiting for his choice. Li Kuang-tu was deity, and deity was Li Kuang-tu. But after all, these were two identities. If he chose to stay in Jianghu State, he would be Li Kuang-tu. Then everything he had in East Island, the whole heaven capital, would be mercilessly suppressed by East Island. Now it was not the final battle of heaven capital more than 3 years ago. After the end of the chaos in Eastern Europe, all the superpowers suffered heavy losses. But Wuji Palace and Jifeng Sword Training School in East Island still maintained their strength. The most important thing was that Lu Xingcangquan and Tianhai Wuji, two grandmasters of the invincible realm, still had enough combat power. When they joined forces and Li Kuang-tu was seriously injured, the situation of the purgatory of heaven capital would undoubtedly be extremely difficult. If he chose to return to heaven capital, he would be deity and the guardian of East Island. But once he made such a choice, his identity would no longer be in doubt for Jianghu State. He would become a real traitor. He had the right to choose, but it was still uncertain whether he could leave Jianghu State. And even if he stayed in Jianghu State, he still had to face Kunlun City, which was unusually silent at this time. Chaos. When the old era passed and the new era began, Jianghu State was completely a huge whirlpool. Li Kuang-tu was in it, and he had never been in a dilemma. What do you suggest? He glanced at Li Tianlan and suddenly asked. I can shelter the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Tianlan's voice was calm as he said a fact that sounded like a joke. Shelter the purgatory of heaven capital. How funny did it sound? But now, Li Tianlan already had such strength. The general trend in Eastern Europe was mighty. Under the general trend, the experts of the invincible realm were really like grass. Now that the general trend had passed, the divine and holy lists in the dark world were almost useless, and most of the experts of the invincible realm had died. Under such circumstances, including Jianghu State, the high-end combat power of the dark world suddenly became scarce. And East Island jumped up. Tianhai Wuji, Lu Xingcangquan. Today's East Island could even be said to be the only country with two experts of the invincible realm who were still at the peak. East Island already had the strength that everyone was afraid of. But Li Tianlan was not afraid of anything. Now he was not afraid of Lu Xingcangquan or Tianhai Wuji. Standing in the sky without shadows in the new era, he was fearless. He could shelter the purgatory of heaven capital and even anyone. What are the conditions? Li Kuang-tu also knew this, but his tone was still mocking. Give you the purgatory of heaven capital? No need. Li Tianlan said blandly. As long as you withdraw from East Island. Withdraw from East Island? Li Kuang-tu was a little surprised. I can't eat it. Li Tianlan opened his mouth seriously. Li Tianlan sheltered the purgatory of heaven capital. No matter what happened between him and Li Kuang-tu, at least in the eyes of outsiders, the purgatory of heaven capital could be regarded as Li Tianlan's force. In this way, Li Tianlan really got too much. The 5 countries in Eastern Europe belonged to Li Tianlan. Next, Li Tianlan would try his best to develop Tiannan. After all, that was his real foundation. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Li Tianlan also had to prepare for the game between Jianghu State and the Wang family of Beihai, and what would happen to the nearly 800,000 square kilometers of land in the northeast. Bai Qingqian suddenly transferred from Qinzhou to Liaodong more than 3 years ago, which was obviously a precaution of the giant group. To some extent, once the game between the Wang family of Beihai and Jianghu State began, the giant group could even be said to be the main force in Jianghu State. This was not only the position of the giant group, but also Dongqing Wudi's current position in Jianghu State could only continue to be tough. His toughness represented Jianghu State and the giant group. It was impossible for Li Tianlan to ignore the giant group. So once the game began, the northeast would also involve a lot of Li Tianlan's energy. In this way, the 5 Eastern European countries and the Wang family of Beihai, which had already occupied Snow Country, would have constant friction. Now there was East Island. Li Tianlan really couldn't eat it. Even if such a big benefit was placed in front of him, he could only temporarily put it down. Now Emperor Dong's palace had just been established, but its expansion had reached the real limit. The next step was to stabilize it. If the purgatory of heaven capital was still in East Island, he really couldn't take care of them. So what do you want to do? Li Guangtu was silent for a while and said slowly, "Come to Tiannan." Li Tianlan said calmly, "I'll arrange it." Tiannan currently didn't belong to Jianghu state. It could be regarded as a good move for the Purgatory of Heaven capital to enter Tiannan, which meant that Li Guangtu didn't completely choose Jianghu state. In this way, he could also leave a part of his foundation in East Island. When Emperor Dong's palace was completely powerful, he could also get in touch with this part of the foundation and annex East Island. Calm, rational, and ambitious. This was the current Li Tianlan. He was becoming more and more mature, and more indifferent. At the right time, I will open the gate of the Purgatory of Heaven capital to enter Jianghu state. You can rest assured about this. Li Tianlan said. Li Guangtu suddenly smiled. Your so-called right time is after you take control of the Purgatory of Heaven capital, right? Li Tianlan didn't speak. In order to let the Purgatory of Heaven capital enter Jianghu state, the first thing to deal with was Kunlun city, and then Li Guangtu. This was a very cruel answer, but it was also the only answer. The Li family is mine, but it also belongs to everyone in the Li family. It doesn't make sense for you and me to argue about this here. Li Tianlan said slowly, "What's wrong with taking them all to Tiannan and giving everyone a chance to choose?" "Are you so confident?" Li Guangtu smiled faintly. "I will take everything of the Li family back to the peak, even beyond the peak, beyond the Wang family of Beihai. Such a Li family is the best. Don't you like it?" Li Tianlan didn't answer the question. Li Guangtu was silent for a long time before he whispered, "That's really good." But his tone was a little complicated. "It's not mine. What's the use of being good?" Li Tianlan looked at him and didn't speak for a long time, until a cell phone ring suddenly sounded. The sharp ringing of the bell cut through the night, making people panic. Li Tianlan took out his cell phone and looked at the number. It was the phone number of Zhou Yuanshan, the current governor of Xianxia. In the deep and silent night, the moment he saw the number, Li Tianlan's heart sank for no reason. He couldn't describe this feeling, but the inexplicable premonition made him extremely cold. He took a deep breath and answered the phone. "Brother-in-law." "Tianlan." Zhou Yuanshan's voice was still steady, but with a slight tremble. "Are you back to Yuzhou?" Li Tianlan said yes. When he came to Yuzhou, he first went to see Dongqing Rushi, and then came to Li Guangtu. Bai Qingqian, who had been staying in the ward, was the first to know the news of his return. Zhou Yuanshan was silent for a moment, and then he said hoarsely, "Come to Lin En." He paused, and then his hoarse voice rang in Li Tianlan's ear like a bolt from the blue. "The old master is dying. Anyway, you have to see him for the last time." End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 678. Clap. In the silent ward with a crisp sound, the cell phone with the screen on slipped from Li Tianlan's hand and fell to the ground. Li Tianlan's mind went blank. He had fought through Beihai, killed DK, and defeated Jiang. At this moment, he, who was getting stronger and stronger, seemed to suddenly lose all his strength. His body shook and he took 2 steps back. With a dull sound, his back hit the wall. No one knew what Li Honghe meant to Li Tianlan. He was an indestructible mountain, a giant pillar that held up the sky, a blazing sun, and a light in the dark. Childhood and adolescence. During the most bitter and tiring but also the most reassuring period of his life, Li Honghe had been by his side. They were in the military camp, which meant the lowest point of the Li family. In the primeval forest where there was only heat and not much sunshine all year round, and in front of the cemetery where countless victims of the Li family were buried, Li Honghe showed him a way. It was steep, dangerous, and full of thorns, but it was the only way. At that time, Li Tianlan could not see the end of the road. Now, Li Tianlan could not see the end of the road either. But Li Tianlan did not even think about it and kept rushing down the road. Blood and death, crisis and temptation, conspiracy and trap, life and death and separation. In the face of all these, Li Tianlan never flinched, because he knew very well that Li Honghe was watching him behind him no matter what. Now he was still sprinting on this road. When all the thorns and mud were left behind by him, the figure who was also watching him behind him finally fell down. The person he cared about the most, respected the most, and worshipped the most. For many years, even if his figure was no longer tall, even if his spirit was gradually declining, even if his eyes became old, Li Tianlan never thought that he would fall down. But now, when the road ahead of him became flat, wide, and full of sunshine and light, he was about to sprint, but Zhou Yuanshan's call told him that Grandpa could not make it. What did he mean? How could he not make it? Li Tianlan's mind was in a mess. He shook his head hard and tried to stand firm to pick up the phone. But as soon as he took a step, he fell down again. There was no light in the ward, and the phone screen was still on, shining faintly. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth moved. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood. He struggled to grab the phone and put it back to his ear. Tianlan? Tianlan? On the phone, Zhou Yuanshan's voice was still ringing. Li Tianlan said, His voice was extremely steady, but the hand holding the phone kept shaking, and his eyes were full of confusion. Come back first. Zhou Yuanshan said in a low voice. The old man has been in a coma for several days. His condition is very bad. I want to ask for your opinion. If you have no other requirements, I have already planned to inform the Parliament of Jianghu State. Parliament? Li Tianlan murmured and repeated the words. This isn't just about your family. Zhou Yuanshan smiled bitterly and said with mixed feelings, Old Li's life and death is a national affair. This was indeed a national affair. After all, Li Honghe was once the patron saint of Jianghu State. Even if he had been standing in the darkness that most people could not see, no one dared to deny his achievements. His death might not be on the news broadcast of Jianghu State like other giants, and everyone knew about it. But in fact, he would receive no less treatment than anyone else. The news about Li Honghe had been tightly blocked. But seeing that everything had come to the end, it was meaningless to block it. Among the 9 directors of Jianghu State Parliament, one was currently visiting Europe, and the other was going to visit Africa in a few days. These things had to stop, and the directors abroad had to return in advance. This was the end of an era. Combined with Li Tianlan's current momentum, the 9 directors of Jianghu State had their reasons to be present. Li Tianlan was silent for a long time. He supported Li Guangtu's bed to stand up and said hoarsely, I'm going. Zhou Yuanshan said, I've arranged a special plane at No. 6 Air Force Base. Li Tianlan said yes and hung up the phone. The blankness and emptiness of suddenly hearing the bad news gradually became clear and faint. Li Tianlan's expression was stiff, but his eyes involuntarily turned red. Li Guangtu had been looking at him for a long time. Grandpa is leaving. He glanced at Li Guangtu and forced himself to speak calmly. In the hazy moonlight, Li Guangtu's expression seemed to freeze all of a sudden. Everything in the room became frozen. After a long time, Li Guangtu said with some difficulty, Where are you going? Li Tianlan didn't answer this unnecessary question. He glanced at Li Guangtu and said, Get ready. Where are you going? Li Guangtu asked again. Li Tianlan frowned. But at this time, he was no longer in the mood to fight with the other party. I'll stay here. Li Guangtu's eyes returned to indifference. He and Li Tianlan were not father and son. But Li Honghe and he were father and son. But whether it was to Li Tianlan or to Li Honghe, Li Guangtu showed only indifference. Li Tianlan raised his palm. Countless sword intents appeared in the ward, entangling Li Guangtu's body layer by layer. Li Guangtu's body remained stiff in the original posture, unable to move. It's not up to you, he whispered. You have to go to Lin with me. There were more and more sword intents in the room, more and more dense, entangling Li Guangtu's body layer by layer. Li Guangtu's figure became blurred and dim in the endless sword intents, and finally was completely hidden by the sword intents. Li Tianlan turned around and went out. He took out his mobile phone and dialed Qin Weibai's number. The phone was quickly connected. Qin Weibai's soft voice sounded, You're back. I'm in the hospital. Li Tianlan's voice was dry. Get ready, we're going to Lin N. Qin Weibai was silent for a moment. She seemed to know what had happened and answered obediently, Will Saint go? He should go back to the southwest. Li Tianlan whispered. With Wei Kunlun's identity, even if he went to Lin N, he would go on behalf of Mount Shu. Got it. Qin Weibai said, I'm going out now. Li Tianlan silently put down his mobile phone and walked out of the hospital. Li Guangtu, who was bound by layers of sword intents, floated in the air, almost fixed above Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan glanced at him. The moonlight all over the sky was clear and cold. Li Guangtu's eyes were still cold and emotionless. Li Tianlan suddenly felt a little lonely. The news that Li Honghe was about to die was constantly spread as a national affair in Jianghu state. At this moment, Li Tianlan really realized that in the future, the Li family that belonged to him, he was the only one left. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.